Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? The rain started as a whisper, soft droplets against the pavement, gentle tapping on window panes. It slid down the marble columns of the Lancaster estate, tracing thin veins of water over the stone, as if the house itself were bleeding. The air was thick with petrichor, the earthy scent of damp soil mixing with the ghostly perfume of jasmine from the overgrown trellis near the entrance. The sound of the rain was a symphony. Each drops a note in a haunting melody. Samuel Lancaster stood in the doorway, the dim light from the crystal chandelier behind him casting his long shadow across the polished floor. His hands rested at his sides, fingers twitching as if longing to close around something solid. There she was, past the wrought iron gate, the empty street, and the veil of shifting mist. The woman. She hadn't moved in over an hour. The street lamp's sickly glow barely touched her figure, making her less a person and more a presence, a smear of darkness against the silver rain, a too-still silhouette, head tilted slightly, hair damp and clinging to her face like seaweed. Her dress, though soaked through, didn't shiver in the wind. The rain should have driven her away by now, made her step back, retreat, turn, but she stood like a statue left out in the storm, untouched by the cold. Her eyes, a piercing shade of blue, seemed to hold a secret. Samuel exhaled slowly, his breath fogging in the night air. A drop of water slid from his temple to his jaw, tracing a path like a fingertip, slow and deliberate. His heartbeat drummed a quiet rhythm beneath his ribs. She was watching him. The space between them crackled with tension, like a held breath, stretched taut, waiting to snap. The wind carried the faint creak of the gate as it swayed, as if something had nudged it to open an inch. He should turn away. He should close the door, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. The suspense was palpable, hanging in the air like the heavy scent of jasmine. 3 months earlier. The funeral was as it should have been, quiet, respectful, and filled with the appropriate sorrow. A sea of black-clad mourners huddled beneath a sky heavy with unshed rain, their hushed whispers blending with the wind and their murmured condolences dissolving into the damp air. The scent of fresh earth and dying flowers clung to the cemetery, a cloying mix of life and decay. Samuel stood beside Rose's parents, his posture perfectly composed, his hands cold despite the warm breeze that drifted through the headstones. The wind carried the distant chime of church bells, a sound that should have been comforting, but instead felt like a warning, hollow and stretched too thin. Rose's mother clung to him, her grip trembling, the sharp edges of her nails pressing into the sleeve of his tailored suit. The silk barely shielded him from the pressure, and he wondered absently if she realized how tightly she was holding on, as if he were the last thread tying her daughter's memory to the world. "She loved you so much, Samuel," she whispered, her voice fragile, her breath warm against his shoulder. She always talked about how lucky she was. He let his arms wrap around her, his grip firm but distant, offering comfort in the way one might comfort a stranger. His voice was smooth and practiced. I was the lucky one. The words sat heavy on his tongue, yet weightless in his chest. After the service, his boss pulled him aside, speaking in the hushed, measured tone people reserved for grief they did not fully understand. Take all the time you need, he said. A loss like this, I can't imagine. We'll hold things down at the office. Samuel nodded, thanked him, and allowed himself to be led away. He had learned his role well, the grieving husband, the shattered man. But grief did not settle in his bones the way it should have. It did not wrap around his chest like a vice, and did not steal his lungs' breath. The days that followed blurred into routine. Once filled with soft laughter and the scent of jasmine tea, the house was now an echo chamber of silence. The bed felt too large, the sheets too smooth, and the bed was untouched on one side. The absence was loud in ways he had never anticipated. The refrigerator's hum at night, the absence of her toothbrush beside his, the ghost of her perfume in the closet, clinging to clothes she would never wear again. His attempts to find solace in his routine only highlighted the void left by her absence. He returned to work, slipping into meetings with robotic precision. His colleagues watched him from the corners of their eyes, their whispers thick with assumptions. His struggle to connect with others was palpable, and his isolation was a heavy shroud. Tennis became an escape, something physical, something that burned. The slam of the ball against the court, the sting of exertion in his muscles. He played too hard, his swings reckless, and the force behind each hit made the others exchange wary glances. "You okay, Sam?" One of them asked after he missed an easy return, standing frozen at the net, his grip tightening around the handle of his racket. He forced a smile. "Just tired." They didn't believe him. 3 months later, it had been exactly 3 months since Rose's funeral. It was also her birthday. The sky was the color of slate, heavy and bruised with approaching rain. The first droplets streaked against the windshield as Samuel drove home, the rhythmic hiss of the wipers cutting through the silence. The city blurred past in smears of neon and shadow, the rain distorting the world into something unreal, something shifting. Then he saw her. She stood on the sidewalk near his building, her frame half illuminated by a flickering street lamp. A woman, barefoot, half naked, her soaked dress clinging to her like a second skin. Her dark hair hung in wet ropes over her face, strands plastered against her pale cheek. Samuel's hands clenched around the wheel, fingers pressing deep into the worn leather. The rain ran down her body in thin rivulets, but something darker streaked her skin. Mud? Blood? The water pooled at her feet, carried swirls of something deep red, vanishing into the gutter. His foot hesitated on the accelerator. The headlights cast her in stark relief. The sharp planes of her face, the unnatural stillness of her posture, the way her shoulders trembled, but her gaze did not falter. It was as if time had frozen, and Samuel was trapped in this eerie moment. She was looking at him, his chest tightened, breath catching somewhere between his ribs. "Just drive past. Don't stop." He swallowed, forced his foot down, and the car lurched forward. The engine's low hum filled the space around him, but it did nothing to drown out the nagging pulse at the back of his mind. His inner turmoil was a storm raging within him, threatening to consume him. "Check the mirror." His eyes flicked upward. She hadn't moved. The rain distorted everything, turning streetlights into watery halos and reflections into shifting phantoms. But she was still there, standing in the same spot, watching. Samuel's throat felt dry, his pulse hammering too fast against his skin. He exhaled sharply, rolling his shoulders, forcing himself to let go of the tension gripping his spine. A trick of the rain, an exhausted mind conjuring ghosts where none existed. He repeated this mantra, trying to convince himself, but the disbelief in his own words was palpable. He told himself that all the way home. As the storm drummed against his windows and thunder rattled the glass that night, he dreamt of her. And the next time it rained, she was there again. His colleagues noticed at work. During lunch meetings, he barely touched his food, stirring it absently, his gaze vacant as though listening to something only he could hear. His coffee sat untouched, growing cold. On the tennis court, he flinched when the first drops of rain hit the ground, his grip tightening around the racket like a lifeline. He missed easy shots. His movements were sluggish, his reaction time dull, as if something invisible weighed him down. Conversations trailed off when he entered the room. Stares lingered too long. They thought he didn't notice, but he did. The way his co-workers watched him from the corners of their eyes, whispering in hushed tones, their concern curdling into unease. One afternoon, his boss pulled him aside, his voice laced with careful hesitation. "Sam, are you all right?" There was a measured pause. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Samuel forced a laugh, a short, hollow sound that scraped against his throat. "Just haven't been sleeping well." A lie. A thin, brittle thing. No one believed him. And then, on the 7th night of rain, he saw her again. Not a faceless, blood-streaked specter. Her, Rosa. She stood beneath the street lamp, motionless, the downpour slicking her hair to her skin. Her dress, the same one from their last night together, clung to her like the tide that had swallowed her whole. Satin, deep blue, heavy with rain, darkened at the hem with something thicker than water. Samuel's breath turned to ice in his lungs. Her dark hair fell in familiar waves over her shoulders, curling like the foam of breaking waves. Her lips trembled just slightly, but her eyes, God, her eyes, were locked onto him with a weight that crushed the air from his chest. Lightning slashed across the sky. In that brief, stuttering flash of light, he saw her fully, the pallor of her skin, the sheen of water clinging to her, and the deep red staining the hem of her dress, blooming outward like ink in water. And then she screamed. The sound ripped through the night, a jagged, guttural wail that shattered something inside him. It wasn't just in his ears, inside his skull, bones, and himself. A raw, piercing shriek clawed at his mind, peeling him open and unraveling him like thread stripped from the edge of a frayed rope. Samuel collapsed, knees hitting the pavement, hands clamping over his ears. Stop! 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 But the scream didn't stop. It wouldn't stop. Because it wasn't just a scream. It was rage. It was pain. It was vengeance. It drowned him, dragged him under like the waves had dragged her. And in that suffocating abyss, a memory surfaced, sharp, inescapable. Not an accident. Not a misstep. He had killed her. The wine glass trembled in his grip. The slow swirl of the drug dissolves, invisible, into a deep red. Her laughter had softened and slurred. Her eyelids had fluttered, her body leaning into him with blind trust. how he had lifted her effortlessly over the yacht's railing. Her body had hit the water like a whisper, silent, vanishing into the dark. He had watched the bubbles rise, population vanish. He had waited, waited. She never came back up. And yet now, here she was. The hospital was quiet, save for the rain tapping against the barred windows, a ceaseless rhythmic whisper against the glass. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly above, casting a cold, sterile glow over the pale walls. The air smelled of antiseptic and damp linen, the scent settling heavy in Samuel's lungs like a weight he could never quite exhale. He sat hunched on the stiff mattress, hands tangled in his graying hair, his fingers pressing into his scalp as if trying to dig something out. A memory, a voice, a nightmare that refused to die. The orderlies moved past his door in shuffling patterns, their voices distant, their presence insignificant. He barely noticed them anymore. They came, they went. They pushed little white pills into his palm and watched to ensure he swallowed. It didn't matter. The pills did nothing. Nothing could stop her. A flash of lightning split the sky. Samuel turned his head toward the window, his breath already shallow, his muscles locking tight. He knew what he would see. He always did. She was there. Standing just beyond the bars, the pale, flickering light haloed her body. Her soaked dress clung to her frame, the dark, heavy fabric dripping onto the windowsill. Her bare feet hovered above the rain-slicked pavement outside, toes barely grazing the surface. They were not touching, never touching. Her hair, once soft waves that tumbled over her shoulders, now hung in tangled ropes, strands sticking to the sunken hollows of her face. Her skin, pallid and waterlogged, stretched too tight over her cheekbones. Her lips, blue, trembling, parted slightly, but no breath escaped. Her appearance was a grotesque mockery of the woman he once knew. She stared. Samuel's pulse thudded against his ribs. His stomach turned, but he couldn't move. He never could. Her arm rose, slow and deliberate, droplets sliding from her fingertips. A single shaking finger extended, pointing directly at him. Accusing, unrelenting. Then, the scream. The room shattered with sound. Not just a noise, not just a voice, a force. A jagged, piercing wail rattled the glass, made the walls tremble and tore through him. Samuel clamped his hands over his ears, but it was useless. The scream wasn't just in the air. It was inside him. It flooded his veins and scraped at the marrow of his bones. It filled every corner of the room and every cell of his body, vibrating, suffocating, and drowning. He slammed himself against the wall, gasping, clawing at his arms, trying to rip something out, something buried beneath his skin. His own sobs broke through, raw and animalistic, but the scream only grew louder, pressing against his skull like a storm waiting to burst. His futile escape attempts only served to highlight his desperation. No one came to help him. No one ever did. The hospital's silence, the absence of any comforting presence, only deepened his isolation. The rain poured outside, heavy, relentless, a drumbeat to his unraveling. She did not leave. She never would. She never would. Oh, Muse. Oh, Catharsis. My legs were on fire by the time they left the ground. I surged upward like a spark, stretching my arms toward the ceiling, grabbing, reaching. I landed hard on my calloused soles. Once more, then, I leapt, gaining height. The third jump took me higher still, and as I returned to the floor, Catching sight of myself in the mirror, I rolled my whole body downward. I found a strange foundation there in the scuffed surface, and I allowed this discovery to take root in the depths of my stomach. It tugged me to the ground like a magnet, providing momentum as I sank. I felt my whole body contort with it, bending in half, caught, flailing like a moth in a web. "Stop! Stop!" His voice echoed sharply off the white walls, the beating of a mighty drum. It startled me out of my panting half-trance, and Louisa, the stage manager, a severe, spectacled woman in a beige blouse, reached out a hand to pause the tape player. The music, that music, driving, discordant, utterly electric, screeched to an abrupt halt. There was silence. Tugging down my shirt, I averted my gaze from the mirror and extended one leg, gently trying to loosen my muscles. But booming in that same voice, the voice of the giant that he was, he rose from his chair and began to circle me like a desert bird. "You're dragging, Hector," he said. "You're descending into the earth too slowly. You understand? You lack impetus." His words rattled his throat as though it were an iron cage. "The dance is precise. That is the challenge of it, yes? It looks wild. It feels wild when you are in it, I know. But it is precise. It is specific. Every motion has intention. 1, 2, 3. He slammed his foot with each word, punctuating them with the thump, thump, thump of his shoe. He rocked his pelvis down, trying to mine for me what exactly I was ruining. And while he could no longer exert himself the way he could in his youth, I saw the whisper of strength in his limbs, the dancer, the echo of the titan he once and still was. At that moment, I hated myself for dancing badly. Really, the only thing worse than dancing badly is knowing that you are dancing badly, that others can tell you are dancing badly. I never imagined I would dance badly before Dimitri Lamoureux. I never imagined I would be dancing this piece before Dimitri Lamoureux, choreographer, director, writer, living legend. He had, in his prime, created 6 variations of what he called human dramas with music. Not quite musicals, but real, honest-to-God works of art. And in my mind, they still towered over the blockbusters dominating Broadway at the time. Louisa, his longtime collaborator, had worked on every premiere and some revivals, such as this one. Lucky her. Lamoureux had practically invented a new language of movement, a language which would inspire crude imitation after crude imitation. Yet, nothing compared. He had flown close to some secret glory, some cosmic thing that no other artist had ever even glimpsed. He was Icarus, never fallen. And I was just me, stupid, out-of-work me. Through dumb luck, I never believed they really liked me in that singing prescription pill commercial. I would actually get to perform No Place, the No Place, that seminal solo dance from human drama with music number 1, Catacombs. It was not quite a featured 20-minute dream ballet. No. In fact, it had been described by at least one critic as a night terror. Primal, cerebral, something that burrowed into a person's head. It was a career maker, though. The role of the dancer had no dialogue, and sure, it spent most of the show backstage. I hadn't even rehearsed with the rest of the cast yet, but if I could step out and command the room for just 6 minutes and 18 seconds, I would get to do this and nothing but this forever, until my body gave out. And I wanted that more than anything. I saw a grainy recording of No Place on PBS as a child. Flipping through the channels in that little apartment, my knees digging into the living room carpet, I paused as a lone figure emerged onto a darkened stage, dressed in gray fabric, hunched in a solitary white spotlight. His body heaved with bracing breaths, ignited by a swell of wind and the crash of drums. He spun in a circle before bending backward completely, with a flexibility I could only hope to one day possess. With each movement, though, with each count, I found myself drawing closer and closer until I was practically pressed flush against the screen, near enough that I could feel the cold static pricking the skin of my face. Poised like that, I extended both my arms outward and began crudely mirroring the dancer's steps. Back up, Hector. How many times do I gotta tell you? You're gonna burn your goddamn eyes out, my father growled. Coming up behind me, he ripped the remote from my hands and changed the channel. He barked at me for blocking the picture, but I had already seen the dance. I had seen it, and having seen it, I craved it, like I had tasted blood. And from that day forward, I devoured TV listings whenever I found them, flipped through magazines in grocery stores, or turned on the guide channel to let it roll. Blue in the static dark, searching, hoping it would appear again. I had asked my mother for lessons once, I remember, but she never really gave me an answer. I think she hoped I would simply forget. Not because she didn't want me to have them, no, but because he wouldn't have wanted me to. I had overheard one morning a suggestion that he would smash my toes if he caught me standing on them, like a ballerina. I figured she had broached the subject. Either way, they aired the recording of Catacombs again in the autumn, very late at night, long past the hour I would be in bed, or sensible people would be watching. But I had planned for it. For weeks, I had been saving wherever I could. Change from lunch, or from errands to the corner store. standing in the doorway to my bedroom, one eye on the alarm clock, I, knowing I couldn't be late, clutched the blank VHS tape to my chest. I had scrounged up just enough to buy it for this singular, solemn purpose. I had made this walk many, many times. The long corridor past my parents' bedroom to the living room. And I knew, by then, that I had to take the trek in threes, extending my legs every third step to avoid the spots where the floor creaked. I listened to my father's snoring, holding my breath as I moved, 3 by 3, avoiding the noise, avoiding the discovery, only to take off running as soon as I felt carpet. Hurrying to the television, I muted it with the remote before shoving the tape into the VCR. And as soon as I was sure that little red light was blinking, I watched. Yeah, I watched. And I mirrored the silent movements as if compelled, as if called. And while I didn't learn to dance for real until high school, when I could spend more time outside the house, I did dance for real that night. I hid the tape in a corner of my closet and snuck it out again and again, whenever the opportunity arose, until it broke and I couldn't even rewind it anymore. I'm sorry. I'm in my head. I can do it, I said at last, speaking to Lamoureux in the mirror of the rehearsal room. I shifted my eyes to the floor, but he pulled up my chin, forcing me to look at myself. I know you can, Hector. We saw it in your audition. Do that. Shall we run the section again? Louisa asked. Her finger hovered over the tape player. No. I'm tired of sections. We've been doing nothing but sections. Let's weave them together now. He needs to feel the full scope. Yes? He locked eyes with my reflection. You can do the full piece? From the top? I nodded, because I did not know what else to do. And I realized in that moment that, more than anything, I wanted to impress him. I didn't want him to regret entrusting me, of all the dancers in the world, with this most sacred thing. And so, I lapsed into my pre-routine. Walking in a circle, the wood cold beneath my feet, I counted my steps in threes, stretching my legs at every third, out of habit or tradition or superstition. I rolled my hands downward next, running my pointer finger along each of my toes, counting out all 10 before taking my place before the mirror. Lamoureux settled back in his chair with a grunt, and turning to Louisa, I gave a nod. She pressed a few buttons, and with a low analog whir, the music began. I exhaled, my whole chest heaving, and counting to myself, I began. Turning, whirling, writhing, I bent myself backward, stretching my entire torso. Lamoureux, too, began keeping time, stomping away with his foot, watching every movement I made, driving me forward, taking hold of the energy I was hurling out into the space. Thump, 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 thump. Each beat seeped into me, filling the pores of my thrashing body and setting my muscles ablaze. I blinked, and at first, I was not even sure I had seen it. It began as something of a flicker of light, a vague shadow over my left shoulder, almost a smudge on the mirror. The music hastened, and Lamoureux thumped time. And as if keeping up with it, the thing in the glass moved. I spun too, and it seemed to spin with me. But locked into the dance, I did not stop to look. No, I spun. And I spun lost completely. And with each turn, the shape seemed to take more solid form until I, facing the mirror, panting, aching, could see it, really see it. Skeletal limbs, impossibly long, arachnid almost, pulsed with tendons and throbbing red veins. It swayed back and forth, collapsing and contorting in on itself, creating and uncreating, almost imitating my movement, but stretching them to the mocking brink. It was a figure, a rotting husk, forged as if from teeth and flesh and living darkness. It moved in a way nothing I had ever seen moved. Choreographed chaos. A star imploding in on itself. A jellyfish. And yet, a man bending completely in half, twitching. It flipped its torso upside down, and its swollen head smacked the floor with a sickening, wet crunch. Somewhere beneath the thumping, I thought I could hear a raw, splintering noise, one that could burrow into a person's skull, digging like claws through grave dirt. Its spine had shattered, I thought. It had snapped itself in half, and yet continued to move. Beneath the music, I could hear the sick, screeching grind of bone on bone. Thump, thump, thump. I leapt, then just as I had leapt before, unable to stop. I stretched my arms upward, once, twice, 3 times. The thing leapt with me, limbs flailing, fingers breaking, twisting and cracking as it furled them toward the ceiling. I cried out, landing hard on the floor, traveling too far in the final leap, plummeting askew. The illusion broke. I rolled upward, legs burning, trying to catch my breath. I almost thought I would vomit. And when I looked, there was nothing in the mirror. Oh, why don't we take a break? Louisa was the one to crack the strange stillness that settled over us. Her voice firm as she stood from her chair and pierced the catacomb that the rehearsal room had become. Step into the hallway, Hector. Are you all right? Do you need me to file an injury report? Why don't you get some water? I was working too hard, I thought, as I slumped against the wall in the corridor. Closing my eyes, I took a long swig from my bottle, using the back of my hand to wipe away the layer of sweat that now drenched my brow. The shape in the mirror flashed into my thoughts like a thunder crack. I winced. There had been nothing there, I decided. Of course there had been nothing there. Nobody else had reacted, so there had been nothing there. An absent-minded hand came down to rub my knee through my tights, and for a moment, I was a little kid again. I could feel the living room carpet digging into my bare legs as I let my thoughts drift to that apartment, to my mother, to my father, and to that low-quality VHS recording, to the countless nights I spent caught in the dull glow of the television, dancing in the dark. Louisa came to collect me 15 minutes later, and as I stepped back into the rehearsal room, assuring her I was just fine, I saw that she had taped a wide blue circle onto the floor. "You traveled too far last time," Lamoureux said from his perch. I had Louisa mark the edges of the stage. It's shaped like a disc. You must stay within the circle, understand? Are you ready to try again? Yes, but I was just thinking. I mean, sitting out there, I know why I'm falling behind. I first saw this piece on television, the PBS recording, you know, hundreds of times. And the dancer only jumps once. During the climax, I mean, he only jumps once. I'm jumping 3 times, I explained. It throws off the next measure for me, so I'm behind the music, and then I rush. Louisa dropped her script on the floor, interrupting me and catching Lamoureux's attention. He looked back to me after a moment. "I remember that dancer from the recording," he said. "He was a last-minute replacement. He was not like you. He lacked stamina. He lacked strength. Could not do all 3 jumps and keep going, so we had to alter it. The cameras were already there, and the show must go on, yes? But you have the ability to perform the piece as conceived, Hector. It's why we chose you. 3 jumps. Forget what you know. Watching him, I felt something strange fluttering in my stomach. Maybe it was nausea. Maybe it was embarrassment at him trying to flatter me. But it was enough. I walked my circle of 3s, counted my toes, and straightened up. And looking at Louisa, I gave a nod. The music began. It was different this time, I thought. My whole body struck by a new momentum. I lurched to the left and then to the right, writhing downward, finding each moment, each breath, each precise movement. Lamoureux was not thumping, and while I only caught glimpses of him as I spun, something odd bubbled across his face. Excitement, maybe, or pleasure. And I had done it, I thought. I had danced before the master. And at last, I had done it well. Still, I found that I dared not look in the mirror. Not really. Dared not allow my eyes to focus too long on my reflection, lest I see the mover. Some part of me, even then, thought maybe it was still lurking there, I jumped. Once, twice, 3 times, extending my arms, my feet finding the floor as I plummeted down, sinking into the earth. I rolled, discovering that solid foundation again, finishing the dance with one final gasp as the music surged and ended in a cacophony. I had done it, panting, soaked, breathless. I looked up, then my limbs ablaze. I looked up, and there simply was no mirror. In its place, there was only an unbroken wall of black, an abyss. Something moved within it, though, dancing through the void, crunching, whirling, twisting, and thumping. I watched it now, watched the way it transfigured itself. It was almost divine. Some odd part of my brain thought, the way it moved, like nothing else had ever moved. Stunning, yes? Lamoureux said, coming up behind me as I knelt there. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Louisa joined him, and all 3 of us looked. Do not be afraid. It dwells there, in the dark. No man in no place. Yes, always there, I think, just beyond what we can see, at least until we descend into it ourselves. He laughed. Do not look for the dead in the glass. You'll not like it. He squeezed my arm. The dance, exactly as devised. 3 jumps when not in public performance, thins the veils, allows us to see. A ritual, if you like. Are we artists, not magicians? And David danced before the Lord with all his might. Louisa and I have not seen in a long time. But I can no longer dance like you. What is it? I asked hoarsely. Do I know? A muse? It moves like the breath of the universe, walks the edge of it. An echo of what has always been. Maybe God. Reductive, but to filter even one part of it for mortal eyes, to be able to imitate some whisper of its aspect. Transcendent. Look, it's choreographing our next masterpiece. I don't understand. Inspiration chooses, Hector. It chose me. He ducked down to speak into my ear. I knew when you gushed about that videotape at your audition. Catacombs has never been recorded for broadcast. Why then did you and only you see it? How? To learn. My eyes widened. So be its filter, be its mirror, be sainted. I rose. I watched. My legs burned. Lamoureux had chosen me because it had chosen me. Yes, I thought. Yes, I wanted it. Me. Out of work, me. The filter. Chosen. I danced. Way. Terminal. Dread. 1. The announcement. The loudspeakers crackled to life, sending a sharp hiss of static through the cavernous, dimly lit terminal. The noise was jarring, a sudden intrusion in the uneasy silence that had settled over the travelers, who were slumped in their seats, fatigue etched deeply into their faces. The endless delays had worn them down, and now they were too exhausted to glance up. The air was thick with the stale scent of burnt coffee and damp, worn-out carpets. A suffocating blend that only added to the growing sense of unease. Then the announcement came, each word clear yet eerily mechanical, carrying a disquieting undertone. Attention, all passengers. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, all flights are canceled indefinitely. Please remain in the terminal. Do not leave the airport. We apologize for the inconvenience. The voice was devoid of emotion, a cold, detached command that sent a ripple of unease through the crowd. Murmurs of frustration, tinged with fear, spread among the passengers, their voices rising and falling like the tide. Overhead, the departure boards flickered, the once orderly rows of destinations and times now spiraling into chaos as every flight switched from delayed to canceled. The fluorescent lights above seemed to dim in unison, their sporadic flickering casting long, jittery shadows across the floor. The terminal, once bustling with the energy of travel, now felt vast, cold, and hollow. A tomb of missed connections and lost hope to the unseen. Hours dragged on, though no one could tell whether it was hours or mere minutes. Time had lost its grip, slipping through the cracks like the insidious cold that seeped into the bones of those huddled in the terminal. People tried to make themselves comfortable, reclining awkwardly on the hard, unyielding plastic chairs, some curling up on the cold, unforgiving floor. Others wandered aimlessly, their eyes hollow, faces pale under the flickering lights. The airport staff, usually a constant presence, had vanished without a trace. The food courts stood empty, their colorful signs now dark, and the enticing smells of food had long faded. Even the ever-vigilant security personnel were nowhere to be found. The only sound was the low, relentless hum of the air conditioning. This dull drone draped the terminal in a blanket of oppressive silence. Occasionally, the rustle of a traveler shifting uncomfortably, or the faint tap of rain against the massive windows broke the quiet. Still, these sounds only served to amplify the growing sense of isolation. The terminal's once familiar noises had transformed into something alien and unsettling. A young woman, clutching a frayed boarding pass like a lifeline, approached the information desk, her footsteps echoing eerily in the empty space. "Excuse me?" she called out, her voice trembling as it reverberated off the walls, swallowed by the emptiness surrounding her. "Is anyone here? What's going on?" Her voice lingered in the air, unanswered, before fading into the void. She turned back towards the scattered passengers, her heart pounding. Then, something caught her eye, a fleeting movement in the glass's reflection, a quick and fluid shadow slipping away into the dim corridors leading to the gates. She spun around, eyes wide, but saw nothing. The same lifeless scene. Yet something had changed. The air felt thicker, heavier, charged with an unseen menace. It was as if the terminal itself was watching, waiting. Others began to sense it too. Paranoia spread like a contagion, infecting one passenger after another. Whispers grew in intensity as people shared their sightings. Dark shapes glimpsed from the corner of their eyes, only to vanish when looked at directly. A man, pale skin glistening with sweat, swore he saw a figure. No, something standing in the shadows near the baggage claim, its eyes gleaming with a cold, malevolent light. His voice cracked as he recounted the encounter, his gaze darting nervously around the terminal as if expecting the shadow to return. 3. The departure. The terminal descended into a deeper, more oppressive gloom as night fell. The few remaining lights flickered and buzzed, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural ways, their edges fraying as if they could reach out and ensnare the unwary. The temperature dropped, a biting chill creeping into the air, chilling the travelers. It was a cold that wasn't just physical. It carried the weight of something ancient and malevolent, something that didn't belong in the world of the living. A family huddled together near a gate, the mother clutching her children tightly, her eyes wide and wild as they darted around the room, watching the shadows with growing terror. A businessman, his suit now wrinkled and his tie askew, paced frantically near the exit doors, tugging at his tie as if it were strangling him. Others remained rooted to their seats, too afraid to move, their eyes heavy with exhaustion, yet wide open with fear. Sleep was not an option. The darkness held many unknowns and unseen threats. Then, a sound came from deep within the terminal. A low, rhythmic thudding. Distant at first, but growing steadily louder. It was the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps echoing through the deserted halls. But these weren't the footsteps of a person. They were too slow, too heavy, and each step seemed to reverberate with a dull finality, like the tolling of a death knell. Panic erupted. People screamed, bolting in all directions, their frantic movements chaotic and disoriented as they searched desperately for an escape. But the exits were sealed, the heavy glass doors locked tight, the windows impossibly thick, distorting the view outside into a surreal, shifting landscape that offered no hope of escape. The shadows were no longer content to linger at the edges. They moved with purpose now, fluid and sentient, slithering along the walls, creeping beneath doors, stretching across the floor like dark tendrils seeking out the terrified passengers. One by one, the travelers were claimed. The shadows reached out, ensnaring them and pulling them into the darkness. Their screams echoed briefly, only to be abruptly cut off as the shadows engulfed them and dragged them into the abyss. Those who tried to hide found no sanctuary. The shadows seeped into every crack and crevice, relentless in their pursuit. The terminal became a hunting ground. The shadows of the predators and the passengers their prey. For the truth, the terminal was silent once more, save for the occasional crackle of the intercom and the distant, echoing thuds that marked the end of yet another life. The air was thick with the lingering scent of fear and despair, a miasma that clung to the walls, the floor, and the air itself. Then, as if in response to the bloodshed, the final announcement came, its tone eerily calm, almost soothing. This is a final boarding call for Flight 66. Passengers, please proceed to Gate D for immediate departure. A small group remained, huddled together, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and terror. They stared at each other with hollow eyes, their faces pale as the full horror of their situation sank in. The gate mentioned in the announcement was at the far end of the terminal, a place none had dared approach. It had always been shrouded in mystery, blocked off by barriers that hinted at endless construction, yet no progress was ever seen. Now, the barriers were gone, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor that led to a single gate. The gate loomed ominously at the end of the corridor, its door slightly ajar. A harsh, unnatural light spilled out from within, bathing the area in an eerie glow. The light was too bright, too white, too wrong. It wasn't the light of salvation or escape. It was the light of something far more sinister, a beacon drawing passengers into the unknown. Compelled by a force they couldn't resist, the survivors began to move toward the gate, their feet dragging as if weighed down by an invisible burden. The closer they got, the more they felt their very essence being pulled from them, their bodies dissolving into the shadows, their souls ripped from their forms and dragged into the eternal void that awaited beyond the gate. As the last of the passengers crossed the threshold, the terminal plunged into complete darkness, the oppressive silence broken only by the faint, lingering whispers of the lost. In the deserted control room, empty screens flickered with static, showing footage of an empty terminal, devoid of life, as if no one had ever been there. Now, a silent, empty shell, the airport waited patiently for the next group of unsuspecting travelers, ready to ensnare them in its endless, inescapable darkness. The intercom crackled one last time, then fell silent. Outside, the world continued, blissfully unaware of the horrors within the terminal. Inside, the shadows waited, patient and hungry, knowing that sooner or later, more victims would arrive, forever lost in the terminal's eternal "You're My Rock." The bride and groom danced their first dance together, the room dark, the spotlight on them. Imogen Carlson tried and failed to grit her teeth. God, nothing was simple these days. Not even the simple acts of jealousy and resentment. How cruel this dance was to parade their beautiful normalcy for everyone to see. She glared. Her mother leaned over, but not too close. Gosh, no. And whispered into her ear, "Do try to smile, dear. You're positively green with envy. It is your cousin's wedding, after all. Couldn't you try to look happy for her? And do something about those straps, will you, dear? They're, slipping." She winced. Pun intended? But Imogen did as her mother requested. She was already on the fringes of society since her accident. She ought not to exacerbate things. Imogen sat upright straighter and forced a smile onto the thing the mirror insisted was her face. She then dug out the dress straps, which had started to dig into both shoulders. The married couple, hands clasped, faces inches apart, spun across the floor in sync. Now and then, they snuck a kiss, much to the delight of the onlookers, who cheered and whistled. The muscles beneath Imogen's eyes twitched. All she wanted was to stay at home and hide away in her room, behind the safety of closed curtains. Yes, lock herself away and await any news from the doctors and scientists. Of course, there was the possibility that they might never understand her issue or find a cure. Mom and Dad had said she couldn't isolate herself like a leper if that were the case. When she retorted that she was a leper, they'd only looked at her with wounded puppy dog eyes, and here they were, watching a couple do everyday things, like touching and kissing. She'd never experience these things again, unless she were okay with screams in response. The song wound to an end, and the crowd roared and applauded. The couple opened up the dance floor to friends and family, waving them over. The music changed from elegant to upbeat. Imogen's parents got up, hand in hand. Her father reached out for her, then stopped before he could hurt himself. "Would you like to?" he said, nodding towards the dancing mob. When he saw the slight shake of his wife's head, he answered himself, "No, I suppose you'd better not." Acidic bile stung the back of her throat. God, she wanted some cake. But she was afraid that people would watch her as she ate, horrified, but unable to look away. "Kill me now," she muttered under her breath. "Oh, if I did that, I wouldn't get to introduce you to Alan." Imogen jumped and yelped. It was Martin, the groom. He wore a tux and held a glass of white wine by the stem. He was smiling at her, a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, heart squelching in her chest. Imogen frowned. What was he here to do? Make fun of her? Pull a prank on her? She'd had enough of that from the local kids who posted jelly packets through their letterbox. She supposed Mum had told her sister, who told her daughter and her groom-to-be. Not that they wouldn't have been able to see that something was wrong with her as soon as she showed up. During their first dance, the only light sources were the DJ's spotlight and Imogen's skin. "Who's Alan?" Martin's smile widened. He was tipsy. "An old school chum of mine. I thought you two would hit it off." Imogen's furrowed brow deepened. Martin had to be joking. And why on earth would anybody hit it off with someone like me? "You can see me, right? Because you're looking positively radiant tonight," said Martin with a wink. Imogen stared at him. He faltered. "Sorry, not funny." The corners of her lips twitched. She could see why her cousin liked this man. He was kind and genuine. "It was a little funny," she conceded. He relaxed. "Alan's a great guy, and he just arrived. He couldn't make it to the ceremony, otherwise you'd have definitely noticed him. There had to be a catch." "Okay, well, what's wrong with him then?" Martin nodded, as though he'd expected this. "Alan had a little accident a few months back. He's been struggling with it. I thought the two of you might have a lot to talk about." Imogen winced. Man, she had a tongue of acid sometimes, like the rest of her. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." She shook her head. "Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's meet the guy." Martin downed the last of his wine, set it on the table, and took a fresh glass from a passing waiter's tray. "Great. Come, I'll introduce you to him. He's right over there. Now listen, he's a little sensitive about his looks, but..." Martin stopped and looked at her, swaying. "I don't think you'll judge him too harshly on that account." Imogen gasped when she saw him. Alan was sat alone in the far corner of the room, where the shadows swam, nursing a drink. He appeared to be a stone golem. "Imogen," slurred Martin, gesturing back and forth. "This is Alan I was telling you about. Alan, this is..." Imogen stepped forward with a genuine smile for the first time in months. She cut Martin off. "Imogen," she said, "it's a pleasure to meet you, Alan." Alan groaned, eyes fixated on his drink, which the servers had served him in a metal beer stein. "Yeah, sure it is. You've had your look at me now." "I haven't finished having my look at you, Alan." Alan flinched, looked up, then gasped. "Oh," he said. "Oh," she answered. Martin laughed, his glass of wine half empty. "All right. I'll pat myself on the back and leave you two to get to know each other. Have fun." She sat beside Alan, who could not take his eyes off her. She removed her polyester gloves to reveal her transparent, gooey green skin. Car crash, 2 lorries, each carrying mutagenic agents, collided. Nobody was hurt, except for a certain Imogen Carlson. She was trapped in her Pinto when the chemicals combined to make something new. Now I can't touch organic materials without absorbing and dissolving them. Alan nodded. He'd ripped his suit where he'd tried to pull it on over his gravel surface. I was backpacking alone when I got the phone call that my mom had fallen down the stairs. I rushed home, taking a shortcut through the haunted mountains. I ignored all the warning signs telling you not to. I guess the mountains took it as an insult and cursed me to a life of cold stoniness. Mum's fine, by the way. Her heart ached for him. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. Must suck not being able to touch anyone. Doctors much help? She shook her head. Nope. They've no idea. Mine neither. They said they've never seen any rock like it, that it doesn't seem to be organic. She gaped at him. She looked from her green, gloopy hand to his rocky one. She looked at him, a question in her eyes. Alan took a minute to register the importance of what he'd said, eyes widening. And then he smiled and answered the question by taking her hand with his. He did not scream. There was no bubbling or sizzling. Imogen did not feel the strange sensation of eating via something other than her mouth. She'd experienced it before, and it wasn't pleasant. "Wow," she said, unable to say more. Alan leaned closer. "Would you like to dance, Imogen?" She thought about it, then threw her anxieties to the wind. Yes, I would, Alan." On their way to the dance floor, Alan stepped on a man's foot, breaking it. Alan didn't notice the screams for an ambulance. She had his complete attention. On their way to the dance floor, Imogen brushed a woman's hair with her ungloved arm, eating the strands. She didn't notice the little shriek or the woman's death glare. He had her complete attention. Doctors have called it thingification, after the thing from Fantastic Four. My guys are calling mine blebitis, like in The Blob. I see you've also spent a lot of time hiding away indoors, glued to the screen. I have too. Guess we're not so alone now, huh? She nodded. Question. The Blob. Original from 1958 or the 1988 remake? Alan pondered as they started to dance, a wide circle of empty dance floor opening up around them. The original's got its charms, but for me, the remake takes the cake. Blasphemy. I know. Imogen couldn't help but smile. Those were her thoughts exactly. She leaned forward and kissed him on his stony lips. When I first saw you, my legs turned to jelly. Alan, grinning after the initial shock of the kiss, pulled her close so they were dancing skin to skin. And when I saw you, it warmed my cold stone heart. Imogen sighed and rested her head against his chest. What a wonderful wedding. Sacrifice. This is an adult story, with language and content which may offend those easily offended. I can remember the sparkles. Sunshine on water. At the river, that warm day in late spring. I remember the droplets on her skin, and I remember her eyes, her huge, childlike eyes, deep brown and clear and innocent, still unaware of her beauty, a child. Her perfect sun-kissed legs. I couldn't keep my eyes off her. I thought, how long do I have? How long will it take her to finish her drink, lips pouting around the rim? I didn't want it to end. A face like one of those perfect, golden ratio faces that artists paint. Every single freckle was perfect, but she was real and was so beautiful it could have made me cry. And when she dived into the river, swam, ran on the bank, I watched her, and I wanted her. I have skills, talents. Everyone knows I can charm, manipulate, lead them where I want them to go. Call me a wolf. But all wolves aren't the same. There is one kind with an amenable disposition, tame and gentle, following the young girls in the streets into their homes. The young girls don't know that these gentle wolves, out of all the wolves, are the most dangerous. Yes, I have skills. I know these girls. They go for the bad boy, and I am the likeness of a devouring wolf, strong and mighty, with great, large eyes, which in the night sparkle like fire, and a wide mouth with most sharp and cruel teeth, a strong body. They want me. They want the dangerous man. All the girls are racing to be the first to bleed, first to kiss, first to touch, first to fuck. It's not that they especially want any of these things, but they are terrified of being different, of being left behind. Stay with the flock, keep in time. She, as much as the others, terrified of not being the perfect girl, the girl who speaks quietly and calmly, who is always kind and nice, never mean or bossy. She who wants to fit in, not lead or lag. So, yes, I could have had her, led her there, like any of the others. But this one was different. I had imagined her and I, something real. I could have shown her things, many beautiful things, and excitement too. It was a dream, I know. I know it could never happen. Eventually I'd change, and it would all go bad. The moon or the season would call me, and I'd hurt her, knowing I didn't want to. It's too hard when it comes, not something you can fight. It just happens. They know that, the ones who choose the girl to wear the hood. In the end, they all know that in the end, the bloodlust prevails. Yes, I'd eat that heart, panting hot and raw. Eat that sweet, dainty morsel. I don't know why they had to send her, why they had to send this girl. Any girl would have been okay. Any young girl. Fresh, you know. They knew. I think they knew my feelings for her. They must have known when they chose her. When they gave her the robe and the hood. Chose her as the virgin. And they knew when they sent her out. They knew she had to die like the others. Like every year. Did that make it better? Stronger? They for sure didn't think of me. Why would they? None of them ever cared about me. Here we are on the path. Her rich cascade of auburn hair tumbling out from her hood. She's skipping, smiling, with that basket full of wine. Some bring cakes, bake things. But she knew her grandmother, and her grandmother, old hag, crept away. She knew what was coming. She left the door unlocked and sneaked into the forest, kept herself safe. That's not as she'll tell it, but that's how it was. Her name doesn't matter now. She is the blood, the offering. They've dressed her in the robe, the hood. She's on the path. Everyone knows where this ends. Everyone but her. They will speak of her by her robe. She had a name, Diani. Sweet, soft Diani. Diani, always with a smile, and so generous it was close to foolish. Her name meant dear, fitting, perhaps, now. Now she is just the girl in the red hood. If she wasn't here, now, sometime later, she would have taken my hand and drawn it onto her breast, and it would have been sweet. In that cottage, on that bed, and she'd love the soft skin of my penis on her lips, and she'd smile when I shuddered as I came inside her, like a child given a gift. But this afternoon isn't going to end like that. I hate them for that. I want to call a pack and hunt them all down. They should fear me now. Those cruel men choosing her, making me do this. The worst thing, the worst part of this nightmare. What is destroying what soul I have left is I know she will taste good as she looks. I have always loved the way she looks. Pale skin and that mass of dark hair tumbling out from her hood. Those child eyes. Too big, really. Those dark brown eyes. A beautiful child face on a woman. I want to look into them, and for her to see me. The real me, you know? Not just the teeth. How long has this gone on? Thousands of years. I have read. Yes, I do read. I am educated. I have read the Greek. Pausanias knew the how and why. Told the story in which, each year, a virgin girl was offered to a malevolent spirit, offered as a sacrifice. And this spirit, dressed in the skin of a wolf, raped and ate the girl. They will tell another story, one that ends well. The girl will be rescued. Wishful thinking. A better story for their guilt. A happy fairy tale. Keep out of the woods. Don't speak to strangers. No one will mention Diani. They will agree, without words, not to mention her. They won't admit they chose the story. They chose the girl. I will be the malevolent spirit. Everyone believes there's a malevolent spirit. What does that mean, malevolent? I don't hate her. I do what they want. I do it for them. Someone has to. Someone always has. 1,000 girls, 1,000 innocent young girls, 1,000 virgins. So their crops will grow. So their gods will smile. I don the skin, the rank smelling skin, and pull the fangs into my mouth. It will haunt me. Next year, and the years after, all I will see is her eyes. I will see my teeth in her eyes. Watch her last moments, her confusion, and the rising fear. Her scream as I take her. Remember her hair tumbling from her hood. Remember the soft, sweet taste on my lips. As we stroll through the woods, the flowers mock me. They cover the peaceful, sun-dappled glades. Bluebells crowding round the base of the trees like flirting girls. Sweet-smelling columbine in the glades. The dog violet line her path. Bow as she walks to her sacrifice. Take your time, pick some flowers, I say. It's a lovely day. I know I'm going to do this. I know the flowers will cover the smell of your fear and your blood when I take you. Will help cover the stench when my teeth rip open your stomach. The gods will smile. They're bastard smiling gods. And the villagers, they all know it's happening. Duplicitous, lying, cruel bastards. They will cover it up again. They will tell their tales like they always do. But they all know what big teeth I have and who I'm going to eat. One book. Wonder. New York City, 1955. Lonnie White pulled up his collar at a Fifth Avenue bookstore window against the cold. Black patches from lack of sleep lay under his eyes. Snowflakes, each an unkindly tiny angel to his mind, descended in the night. But it wasn't the crystals scurrying down his back that gave him the shudders. nor was it the ice melting in the hollow of his back. It was the overwhelming thought the snow crystals gathered together purposely of one mind, a sentient being. This is not possible, he told himself, but it feels all the same, like crystals of death prescient in their condemnation. He laughed at the poetic twist, coming out of his throat like a choking hack. The absurdity of his mind. The existence of hell is ridiculous. Well-dressed Manhattanites strolled by. Ankle-length dresses, pillbox hats, fedoras, and double-breasted suits. Lights flashed, and horns blared from hulking post-war automobiles, as if crying out to him alone, as if they knew him, were accusing him. Lost in thought, he stared, unblinking, at the best-selling novel on display, Scarlet Streets. A photo of the author, Julia Christensen, was poised on the back cover, a beautiful blonde. Her soft brown eyes radiated an undeniable sexual allure. If a passerby were to listen, which they never did, they might hear Lonnie mumbling at the window as they skirted around him. A bestseller, he would announce quietly, shaking his head ever so slowly. A bestseller. A young man. Lonnie was as plain could be. He wore jeans under a green military jacket, though he had never been in the service. Neither handsome nor ugly. He was a man no one noticed. And yet, he preferred it that way. A ghost to the world. Anyone who bothered to look closely could see he was deranged in his loneliness. But no one bothered to look at all, much less closely. His only unique quality was that he lived alone in a 30-room Washington Heights castle, north of Manhattan. The medieval structure was inherited when his parents died. The trust paid the taxes and bills, providing him a stipend to live on. He had no family, no need for a job, no need for friends. Occasionally, like now, he would visit what he thought of as his storefront and think back to Julia, his one and only lover. I loved her, he said to the glass. I truly did. I'm not a bad person. They had met randomly when they had shared a park bench the previous summer. He had guessed she was an actress, and she had responded with a shy smile, as if he had guessed correctly. For some reason, he had mentioned Shakespeare was an actor and a writer. She, of course, had asked if he was a writer. He had admitted this was true, letting his ego lead the way, as men will do when impressing young women. But he felt he was not an authentic writer by any stretch. For this, he had to publish. He simply tapped away on his Smith Corona clipper within his castle tower, his garret, overlooking the Hudson River. Sweating, smoking endless, unfiltered Chesterfields, he pursued his great American novel from a place where his dire imaginings could flow. Julia's eyes had glowed a special, admiring look, and he let the inner warmth of another human being bath him. Much to his surprise, they struck a friendship which began with meeting for coffee in the village and eventually moved on to lovemaking in her apartment. One thing he knew for sure was to never bring her to his castle, for then she would know he had risen no higher in life than an unemployed trust fund recipient and was not a successful writer. This was wrong of him, he knew. But what could he do? This beautiful woman gave him the kind of attention he had never had. Is there any actual harm in letting her think better of me than you really are? Is it so bad to go out and embellish your wardrobe with fine suits to be the man you want to be? What if this is your only and last chance to feel a love and sexual embrace you had known only others to have? And so the deception went on until Julia, as any curious woman would, wanted to see what Lonnie had written. The book he had been tinkering away at did exist in a high stack of typed-out white paper, cross-outs, and scribbles. Nobody had ever read it. The book was just the tapping on typewriter keys to burn his time. But as proof he was a writer, he gathered up the stacks of pages, 300 or more, and took them to Julia. He lay them before her as an offering, and so, as the days went on, he would sprawl on her apartment couch while she read through his novel, page by page, hour by hour. "Don't stare at me while I'm reading, silly," Julia would say, never offering her opinion. Each day, he returned panic-stricken to his castle, for his greatest hope, his desperate passion, was that Julia would like the novel. One word from her could save or crush any last vestiges of self-esteem remaining in his lonely life. He paced and paced into the night in his cavernous dining room, biting his nails. My God, what will she think of my novel? He thought. What if she doesn't like it, but she did like it? And more than just liking it, she had a friend who she thought could publish the work with the oldest publisher in New York, a specialist in suspense and murder. To Lonnie, this seemed beyond comprehension, beyond any imaginings of success he could think of or even dream. Yes, 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 he pleaded. Anything your friend can do. And so he released the pile of pages with Julia to take to her friend. In just 2 short weeks, Julia had word back from Bill. Could Lonnie meet her at her apartment? But it was only later, when she was across from Lonnie in a red leather booth, sipping her gin martini, fresh from their lovemaking, a pink glow glistening on her cheeks, that she said, "I have some news about your book." Lonnie was speechless. He stared, transfixed on her siren's face, her blonde hair cascading in Lonnie's imagination, just the hint of a rise and fall of her breasts under her white blouse. "The manuscript is accepted for publication," she said. This was beyond happiness for Lonnie to hear. The novel, and only from Julia's connections, would become a success. Life was truly grand. "But there is one thing," Julia said, her delicate nails holding a martini glass. "Bill says the marketing of the book is crucial. He won't back it unless we have the right, how did he put it? Image. That's it. The right image." Julia laid out the requirements. "The author needs to be a woman. Me, actually. You have to understand how important this is. Bill says books sell with sexy authors. And you, Lonnie, well, as much as I love you, do you want the book to be successful? It could make a lot of money." At first, Lonnie thought, "No way will I let my book go to a publishing house unless under my name." But then he also thought about what he would walk away from. Lonnie was simply a hobbyist writer. Sure, now that he knew a publisher was interested, he could send it out to multiple publishers and maybe find someone else. But with Julia as the author, he had something else. He had Julia. He had the last and only pleasure he would ever find in a woman. A woman who would likely be offended if he didn't do things her way. A woman who he didn't want to risk losing. It was decided. Julia Christensen would be the author, Lonnie the ghostwriter. "Do you think it would be a good idea to send it out to other publishers?" Lonnie asked. Julia bristled, her eyes staring down. "Maybe, if you don't trust me." This, of course, settled it. The book came to market, and at first went nowhere, but slowly gained traction as a sleeper with a growing readership. A tragic murder mystery with a twist. Heart-rending, the New York Post book summaries said. And so, in 6 months, the book climbed into the bestsellers and became, by all appearances, a blockbuster. At least it was successful from Lonnie's view. Reading the trades and watching Julia Christensen on the talk shows, the book is a hit. A tremendous hit, Julia said, after dragging her upper teeth against her lower lip. Lonnie stared, mesmerized. They were perched on Julia's new kitchen island. She had explained she needed a nicer apartment in case news people were to follow her home. Image, she explained, was everything. Lonnie fidgeted in his chair. "It seems like we should get an advance or something." Julia flipped her right hand as if swiping a bothersome mosquito. "All the money went to marketing, dear." Lonnie took in the marble kitchen island, the lavish oriental rugs, the view of Manhattan. Hesitating like she had remembered something, Julia said, "You'll see. The truth is, I wouldn't even have taken this apartment if Bill hadn't insisted. I've never met Bill. Soon, honey, soon. You'll like him." Within a few months, Lonnie was leaving messages for Julia, and she wasn't calling back. What could be wrong? True, it might offend her, but he decided to stop by. How else could he see her set things right? He knew she was busy, but this was only fair. A man Lonnie had never met answered the apartment door. "My good man, you must be Lonnie," he said. Lonnie could smell greasy hair tonic. The man was lanky, tall, and Lonnie had never seen a human being whose eyes smiled less. "Julia?" "Lonnie!" Wearing a white robe, loose enough for Lonnie to realize this was all she wore, Julia leaned through the doorway of the kitchen. "I would have called you. Finally, you meet Bill." "Bill? Introduce yourself." But Bill didn't have time, as Lonnie swept past him to Julia, who was poking cubes of raw steak and vegetables with a skewer, chopped potatoes, onions, a cucumber. Something rose up in Lonnie, an anger in his chest that grabbed his heart, prevented him from taking a breath as he choked down a venomous, dark taste. Julia could see the anguish in Lonnie's eyes, the naive awareness widening in a little boy's innocence. "What? You think I'd tie up with a loser? A one-book wonder. You've got nothing, Lonnie, not even your book. Now get lost." But we stole it, Lonnie. Your book, yes, but more than that, we stole your creative energy, your mind. It wasn't the words she said that ripped through Lonnie's mind. No. It was recognizing the flush on Julia's face that Lonnie so cherished that set him off, causing him to lose himself in an inner roar rising into the front of his brain. A blinding white. Lonnie grabbed the shish kebab skewer and held the back of Julia's head by grabbing her hair with his left hand. He plunged the steel point into Julia's right eye, then slowly thrust the length forward, his head slightly tilting in curiosity at the ease of the pointed steel scrunching through to the rear of her skull. She screamed and fell, with her hands gripping her face. Lonnie yanked out the skewer, and he was no longer slow or curious. He punched the steel again and again into her chest, blood splattering on her white robe. With each thrust, he felt the emptiness of his life, the never having the authentic love of even one woman. It was so ruthlessly unfair. He ignored Bill as he turned to leave. Bill, near catatonic, remained riveted on Julia's crumpled body. Within weeks, Lonnie picked up the New York Post. A sordid murder affair was splashed on the front page. Author Christensen, murder solved. Kennedy gets the chair. The story described a Mr. William Kennedy who pimped for this lady of the evening, Julia Christensen, until she hit it big with her book. The whore who wrote a bestseller, the article said. Just a pimp and his whore, it turned out. A common story on the streets of New York. Lonnie continued to live in his drafty Washington Heights monstrosity. Sure, he had committed a murder, he thought, but fully justified, pushed beyond his limit, and betrayed on so many levels. Who wouldn't? He often found himself on Fifth Avenue, at the window of his bookstore, as the winter diminished, spring ended, and summer began. In the window, scarlet streets taunted him. The book bragged to him how it was an even greater smash since the prostitute author was murdered. Lonnie paced his castle tower well into the night. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He now knew he had written a bestseller, but he couldn't claim it. He also had writer's block, but knew why. Julia had taken his creative mind and died with it, stolen it, as she had said. She had taken who he was somehow, his talent. But no worries. He knew how to get his creativity back. This only made sense. He grinned to himself. That's it? What greater power than talent? And I'll have plenty. The woman lying in front of Lonnie had published not one, but 4 novels. He had followed her down the dark streets of Brooklyn. And it wasn't difficult, with a little chloroform, to get her back to his castle. She was now tucked safely away within the basement crypt. His parents' bodies lay resting near her in the gray stones, their mouths aghast, eyes open. They lay in graves covered with a clear, glass-like resin. Tossing notepaper to the girl, he demanded she write. Later, he would take the notes to his garret tower and plink away on his Smith Corona. Plink, plink, plink. But this wasn't enough. Only by piercing his eyes into the depth of her creative mind, fusing his eyes with hers in an inexorable transformation, could the process work. He strapped her down on her back and lay prone against the top of her, her soft warmth compressed against him. He sensed her terror. "Don't blink," he begged, digging into her pupils with his own. "The windows are your soul," he pleaded. "I must meet you at exactly the right moment, the moment your eyes go dead." He tightened his hands ever so slowly on her throat, saving the moment, perfecting, staring. As the girl's eyes died, he could feel her talent moving to his own mind, exquisitely. The tiny angels of a sentient being joined him, the ice crystals, the snow. Once completed, he could feel his creativity soaring. He couldn't wait to go to his garret, couldn't wait to join his Smith Corona. But first, some business. This was only out a respect. He honored her with her own place and lay her carefully, lovingly, he felt, in an open grave, the row his parents lay in, covering her with clear resin. She formed a sanctuary of her own, her face aghast, mouth open, eyes seemingly aware. But even while doing so, he tried not to dwell on the acid in his stomach. The burst of talent she'd given him would play out. When the time came, he knew there was only one way to refill his creativity. The snow talked to him, beckoned him on. The crystal angels, "O Mother, please send my father across. It was all a dream." Merle's breath, like rotten fish on top of her tongue. The balled-up, gray, dead mass of it settled at the back of her throat, like stale phlegm. His beady, stained tongue wriggling around on top of her tongue. His hand under her blouse, fumbling, scratching. His nails yellow and black and green, the sight of which made her vomit. His puss-filled, bandaged hand on top of her breast, the nail digging into her nipple, the dirt in his nails mixing with her blood. In her blood, the blood cool in the thick heat of the dark room, sweet, mixing with the scent of the vomit dried on the floor. She had dreamt it in the night, writhing like a dying fish, a pool of yellow sweat, unable to scream for all the phlegm in her throat, the fat tongue in her mouth, the eyes in the window. The eyes were from a long ago dream. Black, a darkness darker than the black heat of the room. A self-eating darkness, turning inwards, two holes in the dark, like the memory of the snake's fangs on Amma's black skin. Two eyes watching her, watching itself. Two eyes, like holes in the heat. She could slip away, like vapor, like smoke, like the silver mist over the river. The river, black in the night, black and shining, winking like the silt around it, silver and loose, a million glinting eyes winking in the black night, the air ripe with the sour promise of raw mangoes, teasing and winking from the branches. Among them, the glinting brown eyes, cat-like of Muna, sitting on the branch naked, his long, cat-like body shining fluorescent, blue and violet, in the dark night. "Ladki," he whispered to her, "want a mango?" His words tinged with the stale scent of a biedi, fishy. In the river, there were fishes as small as a dot, dark and invisible, holes in the river, moving eyes. The big fish did not swim. They stared at her, their mouths sending a bubble up the surface of the water, which burst with a quiet pop, waiting for her answer. "Pop, pop, pop, Munia?" she asked. "Not ripe yet," Muna said, and laughed, revealing a scurvy mouth with wiggling teeth, like maggots. With each shake of the shoulder, a ha up and a he down, the teeth dropped down, raining raining like mangoes, too impatient, too ripe and restless, dropping with a pop, pop, pop as they dropped and popped down. The night black rats gathered them up and scuttled away. An undulating, shadowy tide, whispering, an underground mousy susurrus, like the restrained gossip, sisak, sisak, of the leaves in the night wind, conspiring. Amma had said it was rubbish, that the Aam tree was Aam, spiritless, spirits having no cravings for the mango. It was all make-believe, just whispers, conspiring. But this changed when she saw Muna's body, the penis chopped off, dangling from the tree. And now he was sitting beside it, kicking it absent-mindedly once in a while, so that it went swinging, a Sawan swing scene. Munia began to sing now, bellowing in the night, quiet. Amma, mere baba ko bhejori, ki Sawan aya. Mother, please send my father across. Now the rains have come. And with her voice, the rains came down, quiet at first, trickling down her forehead, down her back, like sweat, mixing with the sweat into a vaporous headache. But soon, as Munia's bellowing grew more hysterical, stretched and cracked, the rain gained violence, sheets after sheets crashing down on the earth. Dum-dum-dum, da-dum, da-dum-dum. There was no song in this rain, nothing sacred, no rhythm, no melody. It was the roar of primeval war drums, the shanknad breaking out of the sky's raging core, bloodthirsty, furious. The mango trees were screaming in anguish as their branches convulsed, epileptic, suicidal, wanting to break free. But the roots unyielding, circling tighter and tighter around their ankles, cutting off the blood, then cutting into the skin, circling tighter and tighter till they were bleeding. They were bleeding and screaming, their blood washed out by the rain. The earth was bleeding, pools of blood, pools of filth running down the mango grove, running down the fields, running down the streets, running down to the river, running down. She looked at Muna, hanging on to the branch, swinging in the rain, the noose getting tighter and tighter, choking, screaming out into the rain. Amma, mere baya ko bejori. She knew that the flow of the dream, the black river, with the pop-pop fish, with the mango carcasses, with the winking stars in its belligerent waters, was running down to the void, the shunya that was inside her, the void that she was made to cover with her sari and petticoat, her red bangles and black bindi, the red dye on her feet, and the toe rings which cut into her skin, the shunya that was a red field, with Amma's corpse lying among the bent-down barley, the teeth-girdled void inside her stomach, as she watched her running towards the mango grove in her shit-stained sari, the blouse torn off, running to the branch that was no longer weighed down by Muna's incomplete body, the void that no Baba, no Pai, no Mama could cross, a bottomless pit. What could Sawan do? The Shunya spelled out by the noose around Muna's neck. The Shunya Murli was trying to prod with his puss-filled fingers and his puss-filled organ. The Shunya that was a dream, the void that was this dream that was a void, flowing, rushing down into the night to where the black river came to a halt at the dried-up vomit puddle, out of which she emerged into the dark room once again. Her body felt slimy, putrid, a mix of semi-digested rice, sweat, and the rotten substance of death. Murli's hands pressed tight around her neck, and her neck gave away, turning to sludge. Murli bent down and licked it up, his tongue abrasive, spiky, leaving scars for flies to lay their eggs on. Her breath started to go, and she could hear the thrashing of her heart in her ear, but she repeated to the beat of her thumping heart, "It is all a dream, a dream, a dream." It was all a dream, but it wasn't hers alone. It also belonged to Amma. It was a dream passed on to her, the only dowry Amma could muster, her inheritance. The dream belonged to Muna too. It was the dream that Amma spun out in the thick heat of the dark room, spinning and spinning. The thread of her word laced with her saliva, the strings of saliva that would purse her lips as she kept mumbling in the dark, spinning, her words indecipherable, a chant, a plea crying out into the night. Muna, Muna, Munia, Munia. It was the dream that Amma had spun out in the dark night, as the man whom they never called Baba filled the air of the room, humid with his sweaty appetite, heavy with his piggish grunts, filled it with the scent of his beedi, which would make Munia sick, filled it with the sight of gray tufts of hair pushing out of his ears, filled it with a heaviness that sat in their stomachs for days, stones in their chests, gray, a shame that stalked them and enwrapped them, entered their bodies, evacuated their innards, rendered their guts hollow, an all-consuming parasite, till they were all sludge, putrid and shameful, wobbly and shapeless, shadows, shunya, the dream that rose above this scent, these sounds, this heaviness, a light, weightless dream that her eyes caught a glimpse of as she had stood there watching, her two eyes glinting in the window, outside the window, Munaya, and her, counting the teeth that they had found this week, buried in the silt around the river, buried in the sand like shells, hollow, heavy with the weight of their own insouciance, their own lack, a self-inflicted negligence dropping out of mouths and scuttering around in the sand. Sometimes they found worms inside them, pink and white and sometimes green. They compared the shapes that they found. Munia, claiming her finds to be sharper, while she rubbed hers against her thumb till it turned raw, certain of their supremacy. Sometimes she kept them in her mouth, swirled them around, the taste of dirt, metallic, sour. She sucked at them like at the stone of the Jaman. Now, Merli's teeth shifted around in her mouth, scuttling down her tongue into her throat, tasting of gutka and anger, scuttling down her body, digging, puncturing the skin, searching for the arteries. A group of 3 scuttled down and lodged into her vagina. And all she could think of was the teeth around the river and the necklace of teeth Munia made for Amma. The same necklace which she ate 1 tooth a time after each meal, her self-prescribed medicine. Outside the window, Munia and she were watching her with a gray feeling in the pit of their stomach, as Murli laid claim to each part of her body and signed it off with the mixture of her own blood and his own dirt. Outside the window, Munia and she became 2 eyes, superimposed, simultaneous. One, a palimpsest of dreams and bodies and voids and eyes, melted into one. He and her, she and him, her and her, peering in at her mother and her mother, dreaming, drifting out of the window through the holes their eyes burned through the darkness, peering in at herself, the dream of I, Amma, Munia, breathing in the dark. Our bellies swell out in a rhythm, up, down, up, down. Munia is not Muna now. She won't be Muna again till morning. When morning comes, she will have to leave herself beside me, wrapped up neatly on the pillow. Leave this dream that Amma has spun for us and cross the shore. But it is still night now. Amma is telling us the story of a king who lost all his kingdom, all of whose children died at his own hand by some cruel accident of fate, all of whose wives died of grief, all of whose citizens died of the plague, and all of whose army died at war. Now, what could such a man do in this world? He wandered around the ghost of his kingdom, dreaming. Munaya and I do not believe this story. We contend that such a man should die, would die. And can't death be a dream? Amma asks. I wake up. Murli is shaking. He is done. He turns around and goes off to sleep. I look out of the window. The sun has started to come up. I repeat to myself, it is all a dream, a dream, a dream. Team meeting, 10 a.m., 1 hour. Happy Monday, everyone, Suzanne burbled. Emma used a good deal of restraint and avoided rolling her eyes. A small victory. Her poker face was getting better. Now everyone got the agenda. So first up, we have some housekeeping items. First, congratulations to Melinda on her 6-year work anniversary. Emma dutifully hit the applause reaction button. Then the celebration reaction button. Then, finally, the heart reaction button. She watched as everyone else hit various reaction buttons. Poor Melinda. 6 years was a long time to cosplay an office worker. Melinda was actually cool, though. She once told Emma a knock-knock joke she had come up with. They had just welcomed a new woman to the group, the third Jennifer on their team. Knock, knock, she said. Who's there? Jennifer. Jennifer who? Jennifer. Probably. They laughed and agreed that you could probably just decide to call everyone Jennifer and be right a reasonable percentage of the time. Did everyone really just decide that they should all name their daughters Jennifer for a few years there? Or what? Some kind of mass hysteria caused by fluoride in the water or something? She watched the last few heart animations on the screen fade. Someone put a GIF in the chat of a duck saying, "Conquaculations." She hated herself for chuckling at it. What was happening to her? She privately messaged Melinda, "Wow, get me the duck out of here." Melinda appended a laughing face to her message. She wrote back, "Right? This whole thing is bringing me down." Goofy face emoji with tongue sticking out, Suzanne went on. Next, I want to remind everyone that self-reviews are due on Friday. Now, I'd really prefer that our team gets them in early. So please, aim for Wednesday, everyone. Don't make me come looking for you. She raised her hand like someone wielding a knife. Because I'll do it. She laughed. A few people tittered in a tired kind of way. Jen, too, frowned a little and looked uncomfortable. She usually had a pretty sour look, but Frank threw his head back and laughed and laughed. His screen froze for a moment, and he looked absolutely insane. It unfroze, and he sat there grinning. Frank. She wasn't keen on him, but didn't despise him or anything. He sat there with too many teeth showing, wearing one of the corporate t-shirts. It had the Sinbiquity logo, a globe inside a heavy square box with the one-word sentence, "winning," underneath. Wow, if she ever assimilated that hard, she hoped someone would put a pillow over her face while she slept. Now, once you complete your self-review, Your manager will complete their review, and then you'll meet to discuss. She messaged Melinda again. Ugh, just kill me now. Melinda sent back a gif of Jack Nicholson breaking through the bathroom door in The Shining. She wrote, exceeding expectations. Ha. Emma laughed. She and Melinda smirked at each other on camera and stifled laughs. A self-review. Pfft. Why would you ever say anything other than, I am knocking it out of the effing park? What else could you possibly say? Emma should work on not rolling her eyes so much in meetings. Emma should also try being, just all around, a little more chipper. Emma should contribute more gifts in meetings. Maybe you should just effing fire Emma. She smirked a little, then caught herself. Self-review. So absurd. She'd lost the thread of the meeting, but knew it wouldn't matter. She heard Suzanne say something about sweets? No, the C-suite. Oh, God. What now? So, John wants everyone to take an extra training on the core values this quarter. He feels that not everyone is making those their priority. Ah, yes. The core values. What were they again? They all started with the letter I. Integrity, ideas, and what was the last one? Idiocy? She stifled a laugh. Suzanne was running through them now. Remember the 3 I's. Integrity, innovation, involvement. Oh yeah, involvement. Ha. The 3 I's. There are 3 I's in the word inimitable, and indignity, and invisible. If only she was invisible. If only she could just turn her camera off for a bit. She zoned out and doodled a fuzzy little monster with 3 eyes on her Sinbiquity notepad. She started drawing flames around the monster's feet and stuck a little pitchfork in its fuzzy hand. She drew in silhouettes of little cowering people below the monster. Then she drew a word balloon and wrote, "Innovate, damn you," inside it. Wow, time was really dragging. She opened her calendar to check whether this was a half-hour or an hour meeting. Oh no, a full hour. She wasn't listening to Suzanne and thought it would be funny to actually turn her volume off. Could she pretend to listen well enough to get by? Probably. She turned the volume off. She sat there, watching Suzanne speak. A few others nod. She nodded a little as well. Fascinating. Oh yes, I fully agree. Yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, you're so right. Her screen got a little pixelated for a moment, froze up, and the color shifted darker. Ah, Suzanne looked like some weird demon for a moment. A trick of the messed up pixels. Oh, too bad. Now the picture was clear again, But Suzanne was showing them all something now, and was gesticulating with her hands. She turned up the volume in time to hear, "How we shall summon our master, and how he shall know us." What? The duck? Suzanne continued showing them a complicated set of hand gestures. She stopped, and her eyes rolled back in her head for a moment. Was she making that weird noise too? Like a crackly N sound that got louder and softer with her hand movements. She finished a series of complex hand contortions. Then she began again. A few people were half-heartedly trying to copy her. Frank seemed to be getting it, and now he was doing it with her. They contorted their hands in a strangely herky-jerky manner, pulling back 2 fingers on one hand with the other hand, now fluttering both hands, using one hand like a claw over the other, bunched up fist. How could he learn it that fast? What was this? Some kind of crazy team-building exercise? Suddenly, Suzanne said sharply, "Emma!" She jumped a little in her chair. Then Suzanne and Frank said together, "Why aren't you participating, Emma?" They continued the complex hand movements. Now it looked like Elise was managing to do it exactly in sync with Suzanne and Frank as well. Emma unmuted her microphone and said, "Oh, I was just trying to watch until I felt I could jump in." Suzanne and Frank and Elise said together, "Just do it. Do it now." She held up her hands and flopped them around a little. Wow, Frank and Elise really drank the Kook-Aid fast, didn't they? This was a very strange meeting. But scanning her coworkers on the screen, they all seemed to find it normal. Dull in its usualness, in fact. Suzanne, Frank, and Elise continued the weird hand movements, encouraging the others to try to follow them. Jake seemed to be getting the hang of it as well, although his square on the screen was so dark, it was hard to tell for sure. Melinda waved her hands ineffectually. Walter and Jen, too, were doing the movements, just a few moments after the others, but actually seemed to be working on learning them. Emma put on the raised hand button. "Yes, Emma, you have a question," Suzanne said. She unmuted her microphone. "Yes, I don't understand the point of this exercise. Is this supposed to be team building or something?" "Oh, yes," said Suzanne. "It's definitely team building." Emma frowned. Was Suzanne having some kind of mental break? She went to message Melinda privately, but couldn't enter anything in the chat window. Ugh, now what? Emma watched Suzanne's hands going through their complicated set of gestures. It was kind of mesmerizing. Emma roused herself. Had she fallen asleep in the meeting? She couldn't have. She checked the time. It didn't seem to have advanced at all. But outside, it seemed to be growing dark. How long had they been in this meeting now? She looked at her co-workers in their small square cells. Suzanne, Frank, Elise, and Jen, too, continued doing the hand motions. Some of the others were now sitting away from their desks, a few in the far corners of their rooms. Mary was almost entirely off-screen, but you could still see a piece of her red sweater and her hand, a red line on the right-hand side of her screen, and her twitching fingers coming in and out of view. Walter was standing facing the wall, not moving. It was pretty creepy, actually. It was time to get the hell out of Dodge, she thought. She clicked on the leave button. Nothing happened. She hit the escape key. Nothing. She tried to close the laptop, but it seemed to be stuck open somehow. Control, Alt, Delete. Nothing. She stood up from her chair, intent on leaving the room. She crossed to the door and reached out for the doorknob, and found herself on the other side of the room, still walking forward. What? She tried again. This time, when she got to the door, she reached out her hand, but the doorknob was very hot. It burned her hand with an audible sizzle. She pulled her hand back with a yelp. She put her burnt fingers in her mouth for a moment, sobbing a little. She went to the windows of her home office and tried to open one, even though she was on the second floor. It wouldn't budge. She grabbed her chair, thinking she would smash it through a window. She couldn't lift it off the ground. It was as if the wheels were heavily magnetized to the floor. She sat back down in her chair, shoulders slumping. She looked at the screen again. Suzanne, Frank, Elise, and Jen, too, were sitting facing their cameras, smiling and continuing the strange hand movements. She closed her eyes for a moment. She thought, is nobody going to say it? She straightened and looked around the room wildly. She put on the raised hand icon and pretended to sit patiently for a moment. Yes, Emma, she said to herself. You have a comment? Crazy laughter bubbled up inside her, but she caught it in her throat and swallowed hard instead. We can't leave here. We are in some kind of twisted trap. Is this hell? I mean, it sure seems like hell, all right. A never-ending meeting. Nobody answered her. One person hit the applause reaction. We need to do something. Call someone. Pull the plug on our computers, maybe? How long will it take the batteries to die? Melinda, look at me. Melinda raised her face to the camera. Her face had 4 red lines on each side, where she had repeatedly clawed her fingers down her face. She seemed to stare directly at Emma, mouthing some words over and over. Mel. Emma put her head down on her arms and cried. Suzanne finally said brightly, Okay, we've heard from Emma. Frank and Elise mouthed the same words as she said them, nodding. Now, if nobody else has any off-topic items, let's get back to the agenda from the Catacombs. I open my bloodshot eyes and watch the shadows dance from the flickering torches hanging on the cold, dripping bricks. My legs and buttocks are numb, but I can't deny the annoying sensation coming from my right hallux. I see a pair of tiny red eyes looking up at me. My mind screams in silent terror as a piece of flesh is torn from just below my curved toenail. The rats are unrelenting in their quest for flesh. My long tenure in this malicious prison has eroded the cobblestone floor. Thick iron chains keep me anchored to the ground. And in this madness of delirium, not one soul can hear my screams. The moisture seeps into my skin, and words from my captors echo through my disillusioned conscience. You will beg for death in the end. For the past 2 years, my body has been rotting away, or at least, I think it's been that long. One tends to lose track of time when your freedom has been shackled. It's hard to discern reality from illusion. The mind creates walls to shield itself from unnecessary damage, but only after your psyche is shredded and hanging by a thread. Oh, the irony. I rub my lanky fingers down the ridges of my shirtless sternum until I reach the white, tattered rags tied around my bony hips. There, I find my salvation. A forgotten photograph the wretches missed during their extensive searches upon my arrival here. Seeing the brittle paper in the roaming light makes my lips curl upward. Ah, my beautiful Reina. Her exquisite cocoa eyes pierce my soul, and her soft red lips ignite a fire in my heart. Those tender sparks of love have kept my lungs expanding. I extend my trembling index finger and stroke her long black hair. Her skin, a sparkling diamond in the darkness. I remember the first time I laid eyes on my beautiful Reina. She sat beside me in English literature when I attended the University of Boston. I dropped my pencil, and she graciously dipped down to grab it for me. When our eyes met, I knew she was the one. The peace I felt told my soul there was no other woman for me. It was like coming home to a warm hearth. My universe exploded into a trillion shining stars, and the best part, she felt it too. Our wedding was filled with family, friends, and happiness. We said our personal vows and cried a river of tears. When it rained at the reception, we couldn't wait to dance in the deluge. As the cool droplets soaked our clothes and flowed down our bodies, we were reborn as one. Alas, the conflicts of a raging war in the Middle East pulled me away from Reyna when I was drafted by the military. We had our hopes set on having a baby, but those plans had to be postponed. Of course, Reyna supported me all the way, but I didn't want to leave her side. The training I had to endure was difficult, but I found solace in Reyna's love letters. I would receive one every week, and I, in turn, would send my love through the wire. We longed for the chaos to be over, so we could resume our lives. It was midwinter when the letters stopped through no fault of our own. I was placed on a secret mission with a group of 12 soldiers to infiltrate the enemy stronghold to seize top-secret files on a nuclear weapon. Everything was going smoothly until Captain Ziggy tripped an alarm on our way out of the complex. And needless to say, we were captured. I can imagine the pain and worry my dearest Reyna had to deal with, because I felt it too. How many oceans has she cried? Sergeant Radagon tortured us for days and wanted to know why we were there and who we were working for. I wouldn't say a word, not even when they threatened to cut my tongue out. Thank goodness it didn't come to that, but I fear my time is running out. One by one, the cries of my fellow comrades grew silent until I was the last man standing. A second pair of elongated teeth biting my peripheral nerve remind me of the horrific reality I find myself in. I shuffle my feet and watch the mangy rodents scatter. I hear the weary sound of boots stomping toward me and take a deep, shuddering breath. A robust man with great authority steps into my view, holding a brown bowl and a lit torch. It's Sergeant Radagon. My dinner has arrived. Hungry Godwin, you'll need your strength to endure the pain to come, because I'm not finished with you yet. My questions will be answered. With that, the sweaty man tosses the bowl at me. The smell of molded oatmeal tickles my nostrils and makes my nose hairs retreat in defeat. My skin crawls like 1,000 insects searching for a new home. As Radagon leaves with a deep chuckle, I cup my hands and scoop what I can. The taste is horrible, but it will give me the energy to do what I must. I wait for darkness to come and know this from the stampede above my head. The guards are more active during the day. At night, they're all but absent. I glance at Reyna's picture and remember the first time we kissed. We were walking at the Pittsburgh Zoo when Reyna stumbled on a stray rock. I caught her before she hit the ground, and as our eyes met, we pressed our lips together. The planet's axis spun loose and found a new home in us. Those were happy times, and my soul aches for more precious memories. But there will be time for that later. Right now, I have work to do. I put her picture back into the rags they call my clothes, and wait. A sudden tickle disturbs my sleeping toes. The rats are back. I watch tiny red eyes and long whiskers flicker around my feet. When I feel teeth stab my skin, I lean forward and snatch the intruder with my bare hands. I hold the rat to the flickering light and wince at the terrified squeals. Well, my little friend, I'm sorry about this, but there is no other way. Crack! I snap the rat's neck and let the blood paint the shackles around my wrists. I've grown quite skinny, so all I needed was a little lubrication. After tossing the rodent to the side, I work my hands back and forth until I'm free from the bonds. I gently lay the links on the floor and stand. My joints pop like snapping twigs, but I ignore the pain. My muscles forgot what it was like to stand. The chains kept me anchored to the floor with little slack where I had to sleep in my own filth. The pain feels great. It reminds me I'm alive. In the corner of my eye, I see a rumbling mound growing in the dark corner. I reach to the wall and grab a torch. Casting a glow, I see 100 rats eating their fallen friend. They don't appreciate the light and hiss at me. You nasty fiends! I use the uneven bricks in the wall as a crutch until I reach a narrow corner. I realize now, more than ever, that this catacomb is a maze. The light reveals a horde of rats in every direction. How can there be so many? The smell of rotting flesh mixed with rancid sewage makes me vomit. I have my answer. The rodents are quick to clean up the mess, and I use the opportunity to move further into the abyss. About halfway down the corridor, the jugular veins in my neck throb in protest. The confined space spins to mock me, and my heart drops like a bowling ball. I close my eyes and reach for Raina's photo. Through the slits of my peripheral view, I see my angel. My mind ventures back to the first time we made love. We were nervous. The fact that we were saving ourselves for that moment still amazes me. I remember the warm blanket of peace and understanding that enveloped us. Our fears were eroded away, and even though we had no clue about what we were doing, our instincts and passions led the way. As we became one, that journey met a happy, climatic ending and marked the beginning of our sexual revolution. It was all about trust in ourselves and each other. I place Raina's picture back into my loincloth and smile. Through uncertain circumstances, we always find a way to keep going. We need to believe in ourselves. I must get back to her. With renewed motivation, I place one foot in front of the other and wobble through the wavy light. The rodents hound my every step. As long as the flame burns bright, the little monsters keep their distance. I weave through the dark labyrinth, only to find more rats chewing on the carpet. carcasses of people who would never be identified. I wonder if any of them were my fellow soldiers. Rounding another bin, I hear a clanking sound and quickly discover a bald man anchored to the wall with boils all over his skin. But please, help me. I narrow my eyes and ask, "What's wrong with you? Are you diseased?" "No. I need the light to shine upon my skin once more, and all my ailments will be cured." I wave my torch up and down his flabby skin and see a spider burrow into one of the pustules. I take a few steps back and grab my heart. Good heavens, what madness is this? In my hasty retreat, I rush by another torch and inadvertently erase the flame. It was the only light shining on the plagued man. With the fire gone, I hear his screams first. "No! Get them off me! Help!" The sound of 100 scampering paws makes me cringe. As the rats eat the man's tarnished flesh, I turn away and take no pleasure in this madness. My journey must continue. I whisk around another corner and see a dangling man with a hollow chest. I extend the torch and gasp. It's Captain Ziggy. He looks like he was left to starve to death. I poke his arm, and an army of hungry rats storm out from the hole in his sternum. I withdraw quickly and fumble for Raina's picture. I need her inspiration now more than ever. The memory of buying our house washes over my trembling mind. That small 2-story shack needed a lot of work, and I didn't want to bother with it. Raina told me the foundations were strong, and that's all that mattered. We worked hard to rebuild everything and made that place a home. It was a castle fitting for a king and queen. Faith, love, determination, hard work, and willpower were all we needed. I replace the keepsake with renewed vigor, bite my lower lip, and trudge on after what seems like an endless journey. I stop when I see a staircase down a long, curvy hallway, bathed in light. It's the exit. A dozen skeleton bodies line the walls like Halloween decorations, and I wonder what wicked fate they must have encountered to deserve deaths like that. I take out Raina's picture once more and kiss it. My sweet angel, if I can reach the light, if I can escape this hellish prison, I will be in your arms again. Please, give me the strength. A distant memory slaps my face. Raina and I went rock climbing in the Appalachian Mountains, and I remember coming to a gap I couldn't cross. Raina, being the fearless warrior, tossed her rope across the chasm and swung across. She urged me to do the same, which I did, but it took a lot of coaxing. You can do it, my love. I harnessed her encouragement and made it in the end. Nothing is impossible as long as you have love and courage. As I step forward, I see thousands of rats in the darkness. A sea of hungry ruby eyes yearning for me to make a wrong move. glance at my torch and see the cherry embers growing dull. I don't think the flames will carry me through this nightmare. If only Reyna was here to toss me a rope. You can do it, my love. Reyna's words ignite a new fire in my gut. The time for thinking is over. If I toss the torch and run for the bright staircase, I might make it out of here. Here goes nothing. I will get back to you, my sweet Reyna. I throw the torch to the middle of the hallway and watch the rats scatter like flies. My legs scream in holy agony as I run for the staircase. I don't look at the menacing creatures, but my ears can't deny their screeching protests. My eyes stay locked on the prize ahead. And as I reach the top of the staircase, the light stabs my eyes like a million suns. The toxic fumes of nicotine smoke pierce my lungs like a sharp spear. Well, where do you think you're going? Have you come to give me some answers? I know the voice well. It belongs to the man who killed my fellow soldiers, Sergeant Radagon. I keep my mouth shut, and while I can't see much, I can tell his face is flushed like a red tomato. Wait, it's not a tomato. It's a cigarette. Ah, now I will burn out your eyes for trying to escape. I shuffle my feet to the side as the hot cherry comes closer to my pupils and hear a raging ruckus as Radagon trips on my blistered feet and crashes down the stairs. He lands in the middle of the hallway where my dying torch screams its last breath. The red eyes are ever watchful, and the next thing I hear is a blood-curdling shriek of horror as the rats eat him alive. I pull out Reyna's picture and smile because I know my beloved wife is waiting for me with open arms. As the sound of 1,000 chomping mouths echo in the abyss, I stumble out from the catacombs and into the light. Gorephans, Mummy and Daddy left me. They went away and left me on my own in this scary place with sharp and spiky stones that stab my feet. I don't want to cry on this beach, if it is a beach, because the only sound is that of pebbles crunching beneath my toes, and my voice sounds weird, like an echo. There's nothing to see except the wispy gray fog that folds around me. It feels like I'm by the sea because of the stones and that disgusting, salty smell. But I can't hear any waves or people splashing. If it is the seaside, a boring seaside with a stony beach, I don't know how I got here. I remember being with Mummy and Daddy. We went for a picnic and stopped at the toy store. Daddy bought me a brand new cat plush, Miss Mittens. At least she's here to keep me company. If I didn't have her, I think I would really cry, not because of the stones, or the fog, or the smell, but because Mummy and Daddy left me. Why would they bring me here? Why would they go home without me? When are they coming back? I don't understand. The next day, Mommy and Daddy left me, and I don't know where they are. I'm crying now, because I've been lost on this beach for so long. And when I see the woman float out of the fog with a smile and a big fluffy blanket, I know she'll help. I know, Tilly. I'm sorry I'm late. It took me some time to locate you. How do you know my name? I ask the woman as she bundles me in her blanket. I've been in my nightdress on this seaside with no sea, and the fog has been getting frosty, so it's nice to be wrapped in something warm. Did Mummy and Daddy send you? Not exactly, Tilly. Mummy and Daddy are sorry they couldn't get to you themselves, but I'm here now, and I'll take care of you. Come along. Let's get you someplace safe. Home? My home, Tilly. For a while. Don't worry. There are other girls like you there. I'm sure you'll make friends. And you can rest while we figure this out. The woman in the old-fashioned dress that has lacy trim around the collar puts her arm around me, and we start to walk back the way she came, stones crunching and crumbling beneath her fancy boots and my frozen toes. I have lots of questions, but I don't know which to ask first, so I say nothing and think about what she said. New home? Other girls? Figure this out? My face feels funny, I say, and my eyelids grow heavy. Your face is beautiful, the woman answers, but I don't reply. Another day, Mummy and Daddy left me, and the house went on fire. That's what Mabel Montgomery is trying to say, in a roundabout way, like I'm a baby. But I know she's wrong. There's no way Mummy and Daddy would leave me alone. And there's no way our house would go on fire because it's a new house with fire alarms and everything. And there's no way I died because I'm sitting in an armchair in an office wearing a stiff blue dress that was laid out for me when I woke up, in a bed with tall posts and a lace canopy. I don't know why she's doing this. I thought she was nice when she brought me here, to this mansion with dozens of rooms and maids and girls. But now I think she might be trying to kidnap me. Maybe she did that to the others. I haven't had a chance to talk to anyone yet, because I just got up today after sleeping for a really long time. But sleeping for a long time is not the same as dying. I know it's hard, the woman with the silver hair says. You need time, but I'm here for you. We will work together to get you through this. And then, when you're ready, we'll find someone nice to take care of you. She places a hand on my shoulder and smiles, but I don't trust her. Not anymore, because it's a lie. This manor, the beach, the fog, a lie, or a dream, or a nightmare. What else can explain the face staring back at me from the mirror as Mabel leads me from her office? The horrible, burnt face of a monster that couldn't be me, because I didn't die in a fire. Yet another day. You're Tilly, right? I'm Jessica. I hope you're doing okay. I know it's a lot to take in, finding yourself here. I know it hurts. A lot. But you'll survive. It's easy for her to say. The teenager in the dress that's the same style as mine, except green. Her face isn't scarred and disgusting. Her hands aren't marbled and shiny. She has long blonde hair like I did. She's pretty. I heard what happened. It must have been so scary. I know how scared I was when I was drowning, but I can't imagine what it must have been like to. She tries to be brave and look at my face while she talks, but the look of pity in her eyes is worse than the look of disgust I see in others, and I hate it. I don't remember, all right? Can you go away? I want to be on my own. Sure. I just thought you might want to talk. I know it isn't easy coming to terms with things. We've all been through it. You'll see a lot of girls like you, keeping to themselves. You'll see girls with injuries and wounds they're not ready to let go of. You'll see others like me. But none of us had it easy. So take your time. It will get better, I promise. I said, leave me alone. I surprise myself by shouting. I hop up from the window seat, abandoning my view of the fog, and push the girl away before storming across the polished wooden floorboards and racing up the staircase to the bedrooms. Bedrooms occupied by girls aged 6 to 18. Girls I don't want to talk to. Girls I can't even look at. Some of them have missing limbs. Some of them have cuts and horrible wounds. Some of them have holes. But the hardest ones to look at are the ones like Jessica, who look complete, like nothing happened, because my body is burnt and away from a fire, and it's not fair. The 5th day, or more. Hey, I'm Carly. Seen you around, but figured you wouldn't want to talk yet. Enjoying Miss Mabel Montgomery's orphanage for late lamented lassies, or, as I call it, the Gorephanage. If you're lonely, you can move in with me. I won't bug you about adapting, and I don't want to know your tragic past. I have a spare bunk since my friend Delilah sold out and got adopted. The traitor. I've seen this girl around too, sulking and being mean to the maids. She's another damaged girl, like me. She has a gash on her neck, one that seems to laugh as she speaks, and purple bruises on her legs and arms, which are visible because she isn't wearing a dress. She's got jeans shorts on and a t-shirt with a picture of Taylor Swift, both of them covered in reddish-brown stains. I guess that's what she was wearing when she got here. I wish I'd kept my night dress and hadn't sold out. Maybe, I reply, which is a surprise. I haven't spoken to anyone in days, though plenty have tried to talk to me. Mabel, the maids, various girls, mostly the complete ones, though some of the gruesome ones too. I wasn't in the mood. But there's something about this freckle-faced girl with the ponytail and chipped front tooth that makes me feel comfortable. Have you been here long? Long enough to know how to get on Miss Mabel's tits and how to scare the shit out of the ghost mothers. Want to come to my room? We can hatch some devious plans. Carly is about my age, but she uses lots of grown-up words, and it makes me nervous, but also excited. I never had a friend like her, and she isn't looking at me funny like the others, even the ones with missing limbs. So I nod and smile for the first time in ages. Leaving my room, I look over the banister down into the foyer of the mansion. Miss Montgomery is there with Jessica, who hasn't spoken to me since I told her to go away. She's holding the hand of a person I haven't seen before, a tall, pale stick of a woman in a tweed outfit. Miss Montgomery opens the door, and wisps of fog sneak in as Jessica looks up and waves. I don't wave back. I see the skinny woman follow Jessica's gaze and gasp as her eyes fall on me. Shocked by my appearance, I stick my tongue out and waggle my hands alongside my crusty face, then hurry after Carly, avoiding Mabel's disappointed look. A later day, Mabel tells me Carly is a rebellious girl who's struggling to accept her own passing, so it would be better if I talked to someone else, so I can process and come to terms. Well, what if I don't want to process how my parents left me to die? What if I don't want to come to terms with being burnt alive and looking like a monster? Carly says, I don't have to. Carly says, I can wear my scars like a badge of honor. And if Mabel and her maids and the ghost mothers who come to replace the kids they left behind in the real world don't like it, then tough. Mothers who leave their children are the worst, even if they do it by dying. Why would I want a new mother anyway? A dead one? They don't care about me. They can't even look at me. Every time one visits, I see how they turn away from me and Carly, and Lucinda, and Selena, and Flair. Because we're ugly, burnt or cut, or missing important pieces. We're Gorephans, and nobody wants a Gorephan, even if they might say they do. Fake smiles, telling me I'm beautiful, telling me my soul is beautiful. I don't give a shit about my soul. I want my face. That's why it's fun when Carly tricks them, waits till they get close, then spurts a fountain of blood from the gash on her neck. So funny seeing them jump. That's why I let her teach me how to summon my own death echo, so I can scare the shit out of ghost mothers by bursting into flames. It gets rid of them pretty fast, and it gets on Miss Montgomery's tits, and I get to spend more time with the Gorephans, the ones that didn't sell out, like Bambi, who took the rope marks off her neck the other day and went away. A traitor, but she'll see. When she gets abandoned again, she'll see it's a waste of time trusting a mother. A bad day. Carly isn't talking. I think she's depressed. Mabel brought a bunch of ghost mothers to the Gorephanage the other day and assembled us girls to be inspected. Not that she used that word. She said there had been an influx of parents to the beach due to a global pandemic, and it was an opportunity to place a few girls. But Carly said we were just being inspected, and of course, it was only girls with no obvious injuries who got adopted. Sure, a few mothers tried to talk to me and pretended they didn't notice my scars, but I knew they were just trying to make me feel better. Why would they pick me when they could have a complete? Why would they want a girl with a face like burnt toast? Carly lost it. After the 4th or 5th mother tried to hug her, she threw her head back and sprayed the biggest fountain of blood I've ever seen. It went everywhere, all over the mothers and the girls and Mabel and the maids and the floor. I didn't think it was ever going to stop. I couldn't stop laughing. Mabel had to send the mothers away, and that's when stupid Lila pushed Carly, telling her she was a selfish a-hole for ruining things for everyone else. How dare she? Why is it okay for completes to get adopted, but not Gorephans? That's not fair. I told Carly that, but she was upset and didn't want to talk. She went to the window seat to stare into the fog. She's been there for days, and I miss her. I'm lonely again. I hate it. I want to go home. The worst day. Carly's missing. Have you seen her? Carly is gone from the window seat. I checked everywhere. The kitchen, the pantry, Lucinda and Flair's rooms, the lounge. But I can't find her, and nobody knows where she is. So I burst into Mabel's office, even though I'm not supposed to when the door's shut. Mabel is behind her desk, talking to a woman and girl who have their backs to me. A woman in jeans and a jumper, and a girl with long brown hair in an ivory dress with lace trim. One of Mabel's dresses, though I haven't seen it before. Tilly, I'm busy. Can you go to your room and wait? I'll talk to you when I finish here. The way she says it makes me think she knows something. I hesitate because I want to know what it is now. But the mother starts to turn, and I don't want to be looked at with disgust, so I back out of the room. Until the girl in the ivory dress turns, and I recognize her freckles and chipped tooth. With her hair down, and without her wound, Carly looks like a different person. A nice girl. A pretty girl. Complete. Tilly, she says, slumping her shoulders. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I don't want to hear it. She's a sellout. A traitor. Like Delilah and Bambi and Selena. Another one who's going to leave me. And this time, I can't stop my tears. It was my time, and I slam the office door shut and run upstairs. Day, whatever. Mabel talks and talks, but I don't hear. Ghost mothers visit, but I stay in bed. Flare and Lucinda try to cheer me up with their death echoes. Flare pops off her head and juggles with it, while Lucinda pulls out her guts and ties them in the shape of a dog. I don't care. Mummy and Daddy left me. Carly left me. Even Miss Mittens disappeared. Why does nobody want me? Why do I exist? I want to die, but I'm already dead. I'm dead. I am dead. A much later day. No, I don't want to stay here. I want to go home. Miss Montgomery's door slams back against the wall, startling me from my fog watching and bringing my eyes to the 6 or 7-year-old girl who runs from the office to the large double doors of the manor. I want my mom. Let me out. 2 maids intercept the girl, whose long blonde hair is bloody and matted around a hole in her head that shows her brain, whose dungarees and shirt are torn and stained. Go away. Don't touch me. Mabel is in her doorway, arms crossed, watching. Just another day at the office. Where's my mom? What did you do to her? The girl lashes out and knocks a vase off a tall wooden table. Leave me alone. The girl pushes a maid away roughly. Where's my mom? I want her. The girl escapes the second maid, not looking where she's going. Runs into me before I can step aside. She looks up, angry, spittle flying from her lips. When she sees I'm just a girl, her expression changes. Have you seen my mom? Do you live here? Fear on her face now, terror in her eyes. Temporarily, I reply, and drop down on one knee. It's a place to be, while we wait. For what? To go home? Sort of. What's your name? Alice. Okay, Alice. I know you're confused, and it will be hard for you to understand why you're here. But it's a safe place. It's okay to be angry, but you can make friends, and those friends will help you come to terms with shut up, the fear gone, the anger back. She thinks I'm another of them because I sound like Mabel. Mom, where are you? She breaks away from me, runs to the staircase and up. The other girls standing at the top, drawn by the commotion. She sees Lucinda and Rebecca with her face of glass shards and screams, drops to the floor, covers her head. A maid secures her, bundles her up, and carries her crying the rest of the way to a room. A bed, a dress. I realize Alice looked me in the eye when I was talking. She didn't flinch or try to get away. I stand and take a step to a wall-mounted mirror. There, staring back at me, is Tilly. Scars remain, but not as monstrous as before. My arms and hands remain pink and shiny, but I recognize myself. In the reflection, Mabel smiles as she closes her door. I still have a long way to go, but maybe, like Jessica said, I will survive, and so will Alice. Unrefined Thirst. Fresh squeezed today, the bartender said, slapping the husky steel barrel behind him. He smiled, his hollow features shadowed by the dim pendant lights over the bar. From his stool, Victor looked down the bar counter. He saw the males with their stark white shirts and freshly pressed slacks, shiny hair slicked neatly behind their ears. They mingled with flirtatious females, elegant dresses in midnight blues and wine-colored reds. The guests drank from cups. The liquid's rousing scent permeated the tavern. Victor's hands quivered as he watched them drink. Was it 3 days since he'd last had a sip? 4? The thirst boiled inside him, but discipline was paramount. He shook his head at the bartender. Cup of bubble water, raising an eyebrow. The bartender leaned in to meet Victor's gaze. By the looks of you, you need a drink, lad. You're paler than the moon. Victor wasn't sure why he chose to make his abstinence difficult. When curing an addict, they say to make it easy, remove all temptations. To enter the belly of the beast was self-restraint suicide. Perhaps it was to prove a point. If he could do it here, he could it anywhere. Maybe it was still too early in his sobriety, but he knew the cause was worth it. He had to do this. He had to know it could work. He shook his head again, tapped his fingers on the bar. Please, just bubble water. The bartender's sunken eyes lingered. You ain't one of those puritanicals, are you? Think you're all high and mighty by taking the pledge? Victor tightened his jaw, opened his mouth to comment. But before the words left his lips, he caught himself. Breathe in, breathe out. That's the first lesson when dealing with temptation. Control your breath. He closed his eyes, breathed the metallic scent of the bar, the soft notes of a piano mixed with the steady chatter of the guests. A voice inside screamed for a drink, but he would choose not to listen. He was better than the carnal needs of his biology. He opened his eyes. I'm no puritanical, just someone requesting bubble water. Is that too much to ask? The bartender eyed him suspiciously. He poured a cup of bubble water, placed it in front of Victor. You know they ain't right, those puritanicals. You've been drinking it since the beginning of time. You think by abstaining, you're a better person. Like you're saving lives or something. I told you, Victor said, sipping his bubble water. I'm no puritanical, and that one there ain't a blend salesman. The bartender thumb gestured to a male at the end of the bar, chatting cocksure between two females. He wore the usual salesman attire, black suit and tie. Oxfords shined to a sheen. Behind sharp cheeks, he grinned, his milky teeth visible even in the muted light. The females grasped his arms on either side, giggled at his jokes with contrite. The scum of the earth, Victor thought. Big earners with mammoth egos. The blend salesmen were the antithesis of everything Victor stood for. All the work he had done to balance the scales, to build justice in the world. And all they cared about was the paycheck, the females, and satisfying their thirst. Them puritanicals ain't big fans of them blend salesmen, the bartender said. You don't look impressed with that one. Victor grimaced. He couldn't reveal his allegiance here. Who knew who could be listening? But in a moment of irritation, perhaps the abstinence was clouding his judgment. Perhaps he was exhausted from years of bickering with heartless morons. He lashed out. And what if I was one? What if I did take the pledge? The moment the words left his lips, he regretted it. A few bar patrons looked over. The bartender stepped back. As he rag-dried the hollow of a cup, he dissected Victor with his eyes. You would have to leave. Yes, sir. Ain't having none of your kind in here. You come to my bar, you drink the fresh squeeze. Victor looked at the stout steel drum, erected like a monument behind the bar. The keg tap was polished to a sparkle. He felt his innards squirm in discomfort. As loathsome as the contents were, the thirst intensified inside him. He pulled his eyes away. Tell you what, said the bartender. He lifted a cup, opened the keg tap, filled the cup to the brim with liquid. You have a sip of this, and you can stay. I know you ain't really one of them puritanicals. He placed the cup beside Victor's bubble water. Victor looked into the cup. The liquid sat in a delicious, dark pool. Willpower, he thought. You can do this. But the metallic scent flooding his nostrils was overbearing. A deep, primal lust took hold, and the thirst spoke within. Just a sip. All the good you've done, you deserve one sip. Beads of sweat formed on his brow. The bar grew hot and stifling. He peeled his collared shirt from his skin. I won't drink that, he whispered under his breath. The bartender leaned forward, placed both forearms on the bar. You're sweating, lad. It's just a sip. It's in our genes, you know. We can't live without it. He nudged the cup forward so that it was under Victor's nose. The smell overpowered him, entranced him in a mesmerizing grip. The bar chatter dampened to a muffle. The piano's notes hollowed as if underwater. A haze blurred the periphery of his vision. It was just him and the cup, the dark liquid reaching with tempestuous hands. The thirst was shrieking. Drink, drink, drink. Victor's hands shook uncontrollably. Discipline, he thought, his logical mind trying to override his thirst. You cannot control your environment, but you can control your choices. His hands were drawn forward like a stringed puppet. Inches from the cup, they shook harder, rattling like jackhammers. The thirst howled maddeningly. The compulsion was too great. The thirst too loud. His hands closed around the cup. Lifting it, he brought the screaming contents toward his lips, and then the bar door slammed open. A loud thud shook the room, and the cold night wind poured in. Found one on the outskirts, a gruff voice said. Victor, along with the rest of the bar's guests, rotated on their stools to the open door. two figures entered. The first was a husky male, decorated head to toe in furs. Between two beady eyes, his nose protruded from his face like a crow's beak. The second was a human, dark hair matted over her face. Her hands were bound in front of her. She was naked, her body mud-caked. Through the thick grime that covered her face, skittish eyes flitted across the room. Kronos gripped her by the hair, dragged her roughly into the dim bar light. He kicked the back of her leg with a boot, and she fell to her knees. "Still room in the keg, Lonnie?" Kronos said, tugging at the woman's hair. Lonnie, the bartender, spread his arms wide. "Typhus, I see the night's hunt was successful. With guests are thirsty as ours, we will make room." "Found her on the outskirts," you said. "Aye, fiddling with our sunshades. Escaped from the juicing farm, this one. Sure smells like it. Is she marked?" "Left wrist." Traced her to old Galaban's farm. Lonnie laughed. "That old sack can't keep them in. I'm surprised the Regency hasn't shut him down." Typhus furrowed his brow. "Unfortunately so. Will be harder to find strays for the fresh squeeze." His eyes met the great steel barrel behind the bar. "Hard work for Typhus? Come now, have a drink, lad. You're in good company. And you've brought entertainment for the night." Bartender Lonnie gestured to the well-dressed patrons lining the bar counter. "Guests, see what our trapper Typhus has brought us. Lonnie's Tavern hires the best. Drinks and a show tonight." The guests at the bar muttered in agreement. Lonnie handed out fresh drinks from the keg. The pianist increased the tempo of their melody. The chatter in the bar amplified, buzzing voices mingling with clinking cups. Victor watched the salesman at the end of the bar drape his arms around the two females. As he whispered in their ears, they chortled with delight. Typhus dragged the dirt-caked human to a pole in the middle of the tavern. He chained her bound hands to the pole. Victor watched her fearful eyes scan the room. The bloodwood ceiling, the pendant lights, the silver-haired pianist in the corner, the great steel keg shimmering like a shrine. Her eyes flitted from guest to guest, the males in their white button-ups, the females in their ornate dresses. As her eyes met Victor's, he had to look away. Her gaze was horrific. It had a haunted quality, like a creature that had suffered untold misery. To look her in the eye was to give this whole charade permission. Victor noticed he was still clutching the cup of keg liquid between his palms. Looking down into the cup, he met his reflection in the dark pool of liquid. His gut roiled with revulsion. Turning away, he put the cup onto the bar. "It begins," Typhus shouted, sipping a cup, strutting across the bar in his furs. "A live juicing, here, in none other than Lonnie's Tavern." The guests were all standing now, facing the center of the room. drinking from their cups. The tavern grew quiet. The voices drowned. The pianist stopped playing. "Bring me the fangs," Typhus roared. From behind the bar, Lonnie hefted a large black case and plopped it onto the counter. He snapped the latches open and lifted the fangs from their case. The metal glimmered under the pendant lights. It was a set of steel jaws, edges serrated, with two knife-like incisors projecting from each jaw. Clear tubes led from the jaws to a thigh-sized collection tank. Typhus took the fangs from Lonnie and moved toward the woman. She shifted on the bloodwood floor, tried to stand, but the grime clutching her body caused her to slide onto her backside. She let out an animalistic yelp. As Typhus approached, she moved behind the pole, attempting to hide from the fangs. The spectators laughed. They clinked their cups and drank. Anticipation etched on their faces. Typhus opened the fangs, the incisors sparkling. As he brought them forward, Lonnie cut in. "Hold on, Typhus." Typhus stopped mid-stride. "We've got one of them puritanicals in our midst," Lonnie said. Typhus, along with the rest of the guests, turned to Lonnie. The room was silent. Lonnie pointed a thick finger at Victor. "Right here, this one, drinking the bubble water." All eyes were on Victor. Loathing carved into their faces. Typhus spat on the floor. "A puritanical here?" Victor's pulse began to hammer. Typhus grinned maliciously, lips curling around the end of his crow's beak. "It's a pity, those who choose to abstain. It's a flawed ideology. We were built for blood. It's in our DNA." Victor wanted to say something, wanted to defend himself, defend his cause, but he couldn't find the words. His lips were too dry, his throat too tight. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He closed his mouth. Typhus smiled. "Looks like abstinence has silenced our high and mighty." The room laughed. Victor felt beads of sweat roll down his forehead. They would kill him if they knew the truth, especially in the presence of a trapper. Others could sometimes be reasoned with. They could see the harm they were causing the humans. They would disagree, of course, and would still choose to satisfy their thirst. But they would leave you to your own. You have your point of view. I have mine, they would say. Trappers were not like that at all. Puritanicals must be eliminated at all costs. That was the trapper philosophy. "I'm not a puritanical," Victor lied. "They are a disgrace to our kind." It made him sick saying it, but he knew it needed to be said. A murmur stirred amongst the bar patrons. "Then why haven't you taken a sip of my fresh squeeze?" Lonnie said. His sunken eyes were dark, hollow pits. "Prove it to us." He pushed the keg cup toward Victor. "I have a better idea." It was the salesman's voice this time, smooth and mocking. The two snickering females were still ensnared beneath his languorous arms. He should juice her. Make him do it. Victor's stomach dropped. He wanted to vomit, to hurl his insides onto the bloodwood floor. Didn't they understand? It didn't have to be like this. There were other methods, ethical methods. There was the stem cell research the puritanical foundation had invested in. It was no longer in its infancy. Soon, human blood could be cultivated in a lab, so juice farms wouldn't need to exist. And there was the alternative blood. Beyond blood. Sure, it didn't taste quite the same, but they were improving the formula every month. He knew the technology would take time, but even if juicing was necessary in the meantime, why did it have to be done this way? Why were there some who would put slaughter on display as a testament to our kind? Why was the world so raw and ruthless? Couldn't we see that humans suffered just as we did? Typhus held out the fangs, fur boots clopping toward Victor. You heard the lad? Victor hesitated, felt a fist squeezing at his insides. Typhus was now beside him, placing the fangs in his limp hands. You're as pale as milk, Typhus whispered in his ear. I know that thirst within. They were all looking at him. Typhus, Lonnie, the patrons, the human. It was as if he were in a prison. Garlic and silver and sunlight closing in from all sides. He knew if he did not perform the act, if he did not return to his violent roots, what he was made to be, the room would destroy him. They would tear into him with their hungry fangs, ripping flesh from bone like a pack of lions. And they would juice the human anyway. They would take her life just as fast as they took his. Is refusal worth it? How many human lives could he save in the future if he walked out of here alive? How much good could he do if he could continue the puritanical cause? Victor stepped forward. He carried the jaws in one hand, held the collection tank in the other. The human squirmed on the ground, slipping along the floor with her muddy body. Her wide eyes were filled with fear. She tried to pull away, but the chain held her to the pole. Typhus made the job easier. He sliced the woman's thigh with a knife. She screamed, rivulets of blood flowing from the wound. Blood. Fresh cut, human blood. Victor's nostrils flared, and the heavy metallic scent flooded in. It was intoxicating. I'm made for this, he thought. This is how we were built. Blood was his life force, and a vampire needed its feed. He was inches from her now. He placed the collection tank on the floor, and with both hands, opened the fangs. He positioned them over her gashed thigh, prepared to crush down, to bite the metal viciously into her flesh. Victor smiled at her, bared his teeth, fangs glinting in the dim light. His hands were steady, more steady than they've ever been. And then he looked into her eyes, those haunted eyes, those tortured eyes.
They screamed at him, shrieked, cursed, howled as loud as eyes could howl, and he felt everything. It's strange, Victor thought, as he crushed the fangs closed, how some do what's right, even when it's the worst possible decision. The chain snapped in two. The vampires came at him,